Chapter 1300. Zhao Shinkong's face darkened. He could barely hold off a prime sovereign, but it was almost impossible with the addition of the witch of the demonic sect. At this moment, a beautiful figure in a white dress stood in front of Wan. It was Yi Zhangyue. Sister Zhangyue, you have nothing to do with Jiankui. Why are you meddling in other people's business? Wan Er's smile disappeared. I just don't want you to get the sacred emperor's inheritance, Yi Zhangyue said with a flash in her eyes. Excuse. Wan Er frowned. At this moment, Chu Xuanjun moved and stepped out, wanting to rush to the golden arena. Seeing Chu Xuanjun make a move, many geniuses were shocked. He was a king of geniuses. Not everyone dared to stop him. Jian Jinghong and the others gritted their teeth and wanted to stop him. At this moment, a white-robed figure stood in front of Chu Xuanjun again. Jun Xiaoyao. Chu Xuanjun raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect Jun Xiaoyao to stop him at this critical moment. The sacred emperor's inheritance is not fated with you, Jun Xiaoyao said with a faint smile. Do you know that if you delay me, you won't be able to get the sacred emperor's inheritance? In the end, you will only benefit Jiankui. Chu Xuanjun's face was cold. So what? I owe him a favor anyway, Jun Xiaoyao said indifferently. Chu Xuanjun's face turned pale. He knew that with Jun Xiaoyao blocking him, it would be very difficult for him to challenge Yi Guqin in the golden arena. Even if he wasn't afraid of Jun Xiaoyao, it was almost impossible for him to completely suppress him. Right now, all the Sky Prides were dumbfounded. 3 geniuses wanted to fight Yi Guqin, but they were stopped by the other 3 geniuses. None of the people present had expected such a situation. Jiankui is really popular. But now, it seems that no one owes Jiankui a favor. Young Master Fuxing, Dao Wuming, smiled faintly and stepped out. He was also one of the top 10 young masters and had extraordinary combat strength. What Dao Wuming said was indeed true. From the looks of it now, no one had received any favors from Yi Guqin. The eyes of Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling, and Su Jiqing flashed. They knew that they might not be able to stop Dao Wuming, but even delaying him for a moment was good enough. Just as Dao Wuming was about to attack, another azure-robed figure stood in front of Dao Wuming. It was Qin Qingxiao, who was being controlled by Dugu Qiuma. The surrounding Sky Prides were in an uproar. Everyone looked at Dugu Qiuma at the same time. What did it mean for Qin Qingxiao to stand in front of Dao Wuming? It meant that Dugu begged the devil to stop Dao Wuming. But why was that? Everyone's eyes were filled with doubt. Seeing this, Huang Qianqiu's face turned even colder. He turned to Dugu for help. It was as if he was looking at a dead person. Although Qin Qingxiao and Huang Qianqiu did not have much of a relationship, they were both from the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. Huang Qianqiu was unhappy that Qin Qingxiao was being controlled like a puppet. Dugu Qiuma, why did you attack? Dao Wuming frowned. Although Qin Qingxiao's strength was slightly weaker than the 10 great young masters, he was still a Sky Pride on the Dragon Phoenix list. It was impossible for him to defeat Dao Wuming, but delaying him for a while was still doable. No reason. Don't even think about getting a share of the Sage Emperor's inheritance, Dugu Qiuma said coldly. It was not time for him to reveal that he was Yi Guqin's clone, because he himself was Yi Guqin's greatest trump card. And this trump card had to be used against Di Haotian. Therefore, he could not reveal it for the time being, in case Di Haotian was alerted and made preparations in advance. Troublesome? Dao Wuming shook his head slightly, unhappy. Seeing that the 4 Sky Prides were stopped, all the Sky Prides were stunned. Did the heavens want Yi Guqin to obtain the Sage Emperor's inheritance? The Sage Emperor's inheritance can only be obtained by me. Huang Qianqiu stepped forward, his aura surging wildly. The might of the 8th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm was terrifying. Huang Qianqiu has finally attacked. Who dares to stop him? Yeah, he's a Sky Pride of the 4 Emperors. He's even stronger than the 10 great young masters. Didn't Huang Qianqiu say that anyone who tries to stop him will die? Seeing that Huang Qianqiu had attacked, the Sky Prides felt helpless. It was impossible for them to snatch the Sage Emperor's inheritance from Huang Qianqiu. Seeing that no one dared to stop him, Huang Qianqiu's lips curled up. At that moment, a pitch-black sword ray pierced through the air. Who's there? Huang Qianqiu's face darkened. With a flick of his hand, the heaven-shattering palm formed and shot forward. Amidst the violent collision, a white-haired, black-robed figure stood in front of Huang Qianqiu, blocking him. A cold, dark golden demonic eye stared emotionlessly at Huang Qianqiu. Dugu Chuma actually dared to attack? He must be crazy. Although he's powerful, his opponent is Huang Qianqiu. Many sky prides were shocked. Huang Qianqiu was not a nobody that could block him. If he wasn't careful, he might even lose his life. But Chuma. Not far away, Princess Luo Ho bit her lip. This was the first time she had doubts. However, Princess Luo Ho believed that Dugu Chuma wanted to defeat Huang Qianqiu before fighting for the Sage Emperor's inheritance. But was Huang Qianqiu that easy to defeat? Huang Qianqiu looked at Dugu Chuma as if he was looking at a dead man. You really can't wait to die? I haven't settled the score with you for Qin Qingshao, Huang Qianqiu said coldly. Die? With just you? Dugu Chuma's lips curled into a cold smile. Huang Qianqiu might be powerful, but Dugu Chuma was no pushover either. Hearing Dugu Chuma's words, the sky prides swallowed hard. Huang Qianqiu was already arrogant enough, but they didn't expect Dugu Chuma to be even more arrogant. Haha, how long has it been since someone dared to say something like that to my face? Good, very good. Since that's the case, I'll kill you first before killing Jin Kuei. Huang Qianqiu was really angry. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his arm. A domineering giant sword appeared in his hand. The giant sword was single-edged like a machete, exuding the power of desolation and destruction. It was Huang Qianqiu's calamity divine weapon, the Desolate God Slash. Die! Huang Qianqiu slashed with his sword. Dugu Chuma also took out the God Devourer's sword to counterattack. The two of them collided like Mars crashing into Earth, and a huge battle ensued. Seeing the sky prides being blocked one by one, the remaining sky prides were hesitant. After all, Jian Jinghong and the other sword sons were still there. They could also block Huang Qianqiu. Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling, Su Jiqing, and the rest heaved a sigh of relief as they watched the battle. It seemed like Yi Guqin was temporarily out of danger. However, at that moment, Gu Xiaoyang finally made his move. Let's see who else wants to stop me. Gu Xiaoyang said coldly. Jian Jinghong and the rest tensed up. They had yet to recover from their injuries, and they could still block the other sky prides. However, with Gu Xiaoyang's strength, it would be difficult for them to block him. You guys don't have to stop him. Just nice, let me finish him myself. In the golden arena, Yi Guqin stood with his hands behind his back and said nonchalantly. Hearing Yi Guqin's words, Jian Jinghong and the rest didn't make a move. Gu Xiaoyang took a deep look at Yi Guqin. Then he stepped into the air and landed on the arena. The two of them faced each other, and the atmosphere was tense. Who exactly are you? Gu Xiaoyang's eyes narrowed as he asked. Of course, he didn't think that Yi Guqin would answer him. However, to Gu Xiaoyang's surprise, Yi Guqin chuckled. Oh, so you really want to know? Chapter 1301. Hearing Yi Guqin's words, Gu Xiaoyang's eyes were filled with surprise. Could it be that the mysterious Jin Kuei in front of him, who was wearing a ghost mask, had another identity? Gu Xiaoyang was not the only one who heard Yi Guqin's words. The other geniuses in the Land of Saints' inheritance also heard it. Their eyes were also focused on him, and their ears were pricked up. In fact, they were also very curious about the true identity of this Jin Kuei from the Sword Dynasty. Is he going to announce his identity? Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling clenched their hands in front of their chests, their hearts pounding. If Yi Guqin's true identity was revealed, it would definitely cause a huge commotion and shock the entire Nantian region. This was no small matter. Mu Xingzu and Su Zihao, who knew Yi Guqin's true identity, were also nervous. Master, are you finally going to reveal your true identity? Mu Xingzu was also nervous. This meant that Yi Guqin would have to bear great danger in the future. But at this point, Yi Guqin could no longer hide it. He needed to go all out to deal with Gu Xiaoyang, and could no longer hide it. Moreover, as long as he could obtain the Saint Emperor's inheritance, Yi Guqin would be protected by Beimao, the Lord of the North Underworld. Furthermore, there was also the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion behind Jun Xiaoyao. Yi Guchen believed that the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion would not stay out of the matter after he revealed his strength. Jun Xiaoyao would also do his best to get the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion to help Yi Guchen. Therefore, Yi Guchen did not make this decision on a whim. He made this decision after careful consideration. Moreover, Yi Guchen had had enough of the days of hiding his identity. From now on, he would reveal his true identity to the world. Hee, Jin Kuei, you don't have to hide it. I won't be surprised no matter what your identity is, Gu Xiaoyang said calmly, standing with his hands behind his back. He had the backing of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, so he did have the right to say such words. Even if this Jian Kuei was from one of the 3 hidden forces, Gu Xiaoyang wouldn't be surprised. However, Gu Xiaoyang was wrong. Yi Guchen did not answer. Instead, he took a step forward. The 9-dragon lightning prison sword was in his hand. Zhan Feng Zhan, Wen Tu Han. Yi Guchen's tone was calm as he recited the poem. He slowly raised his other hand and placed it on the ghost mask on his face. Who dares to drink with me? Who dares to stop me? Yi Guchen's palm pressed against the ghost mask and took it off inch by inch. Sword out, return to life. Yi Guchen's footsteps came to a stop. He took off the grimace mask in his hand along with the leather mask. You're not returning him. With that last sentence, Yi Guchen shook his hand. The grimace mask and the leather mask were reduced to dust. A cold and handsome face appeared in everyone's eyes. Only I, Yi Guchen, am heaven and earth. Yi Guchen's sword was pointed at the sky. His black hair danced in the wind. His aura shook the heavens and earth, shocking the universe. Only I, heaven and earth. Yi Guchen of the Sword Sect. His words were like thunder, piercing through the heavens and shaking everyone's ears. Absolute shock. Within the sacred imperial world, all the sky prides were shocked speechless. Outside the sacred imperial world, countless forces were dead silent. Yi Guchen? Jin Kuei of the Sword Dynasty is Yi Guchen? Yi Guchen, is he the Yi Guchen who borrowed a sword from the heavens and severely injured Di Haotian in the Tianhuang Plains? How is that possible? Isn't he dead? Why is he still alive? What the hell? Not only is Yi Guchen not dead, but he has also become Jin Kuei of the Sword Dynasty? Within the sacred imperial world, all the sky prides were shocked. They could not believe their eyes. It had only been slightly more than a year since the incident at the Tianhuang Plains. Therefore, the name Yi Guchen had not been forgotten. Therefore, when Yi Guchen said his real name, many sky prides immediately remembered. Yi Guchen, hearing this name, Yan Wushuang's tears flowed down. The young man who had suffered a crushing defeat at the Tianhuang Plains had concealed his identity for a year. Finally, at this moment he shone brightly once again. The name Yi Guchen had finally reappeared in the world. Junior brother Yi. Ji Ling was also very excited. On the other side, Princess Phoenix Dawn's head was buzzing. She could not believe her eyes. Jin Kuei is Yi Guchen. It's really him. Princess Phoenix Dawn covered her red lips. She could not describe the feeling in her heart. Once again, she recalled why Jin Kuei from the Sword Dynasty had appeared when the Phoenix Nya Dynasty had attacked the Swallow Cloud Dynasty. Now, she finally understood. Jin Kuei was Yi Guchen. Not only was he not dead, but he was even stronger. He was the brightest star in the sacred imperial world. The sky prides who were in the midst of fighting stopped for a moment. Zhao Shinkong, Zhao Xiaodi, and the others were all in disbelief. Gu Zun, on the other hand, was glaring at Yi Guchen. A violent killing intent erupted from him uncontrollably. Yi Guchen, it's really him? Gu Zun's hand trembled. It was not fear or anger. It was excitement. The excitement of finally meeting a worthy opponent. The excitement of being able to personally put an end to this. There was no doubt about it. Based on that feeling, Gu Zun knew that it was indeed Yi Guchen. It could not be someone else in disguise. He's still alive? Dao Wuming was also shocked. He did not expect this at all. He's Yi Guchen from the Sword Sect who severely injured Di Haotian? The witch was also shocked. This was also beyond her expectations. She found it unbelievable. As for Yi Yue, her heart trembled. She finally understood why she had such a special feeling when she saw Jian Kuei. The truth was now revealed. It's you. Yi Yue was also in a complicated mood. Brother, no wonder I felt a little familiar. Jun Xiaoyao was also surprised, but soon a smile appeared on his face. Yi Guchen had always been someone he admired. Jun Xiaoyao's biggest regret was that he could not go to the Tianhuang Plain to help. Now, he could finally make up for it. He's Yi Guchen, the one who injured senior brother Di Haoyan? Chu Xuanzhen frowned. In his heart, Di Haoyan had always been a benchmark. In the entire Nantian region, no one could threaten Di Haoyan's position. Back then, when Chu Xuanzhen heard that Di Haoyan was injured, he could not even believe it. Someone could actually injure Di Haoyan? Now that Yi Guchen's real identity was exposed, Chu Xuanzhen still could not accept it. The person who injured Di Haoyan was Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty, whom he had underestimated. Yi Guchen, what did you do to injure senior brother Haoyan? Chu Xuanzhen's expression was cold. He thought that he could take care of Yi Guchen without Di Haoyan's help. In addition, Huang Qianqiu was also very surprised. Yi Guchen, the one who injured Di Haoyan, humph. Huang Qianqiu's expression was indifferent. Du Guqiu did not think there was anything wrong with Yi Guchen's identity being exposed. He was Yi Guchen's hidden trump card, which had not been used yet. At this moment, in the sacred imperial realm, all the geniuses were shocked beyond words. However, the shock of all the geniuses added together could not compare to the shock in Gu Xiaoyang's heart. Yi Guchen, how could it be you? Chapter 1302. Gu Xiaoyang didn't dare to believe his eyes, nor did he dare to believe his ears. A dead person, a small character that he had almost forgotten, had actually appeared in front of him, alive and well. If it was anyone else, they would feel as if they had seen a ghost. Gu Xiaoyang had guessed a lot about Jian Kuei's identity. He even believed that the person behind the sword chief might be a prodigy from a hidden force. Now that the truth was out, Gu Xiaoyang didn't dare to believe it. Are you shocked? Surprised? Astonished? I've said it before. Even the heavens can't take Yi Guchen's life. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows with a cold expression. He had survived the Tianhuang Plains and became even stronger. Now he was fighting for revenge. You're still alive after taking the 9 deaths no regrets pill. What kind of dog's hit luck do you have? Gu Xiaoyang's expression was very ugly. His face was ashen, and his body was trembling with anger. When he thought about how Yi Guchen was still alive and even mocking him behind his mask, Gu Xiaoyang felt his anger burning. However, Gu Xiaoyang was still a shrewd person after all. He took a deep breath and suppressed the waves in his heart. He said coldly, although I don't know what kind of dog's hit luck you have, it doesn't matter. Since you're lucky enough to survive, then today I, Gu Xiaoyang, will cut off your path of survival once again. Gu Xiaoyang was still confident in dealing with Yi Guchen. Is that so? I've read that poem to someone before. Yi Guchen smiled coldly. Who? Gu Xiaoyang said indifferently. Xia Yubing, and she is already dead, Yi Guchen said indifferently. In other words, Gu Xiaoyang would follow in Xia Yubing's footsteps. It was time to put an end to the karma of stealing his sword embryo. Comparing me to Xia Yubing? You're too naive. Gu Xiaoyang raised his hand, and the 7-star phantom sword vibrated with powerful fluctuations. In the past, Xia Yubing was like an insurmountable mountain in my eyes. But now, she has already turned into dust. As for you, you are the same. Yi Guchen took a step forward, his aura gushing out. His eyes were burning with the flames of vengeance. Since the beginning of the Saint Origin dynasty, when had Yi Guchen ever feared anyone? Gu Xiaoyang couldn't, Huang Qianqiu couldn't, and neither could Di Haoyan. Come, let's fight. Let's settle this once and for all. The aura of Yi Guchen's 4th layer of the leakless divine palace erupted. Sword intent surged, and the flames of war soared to the heavens. Today I will end your life. Gu Xiaoyang also activated the power of his divine dwelling. Although it was only a flawless divine dwelling, the cultivation of the seventh layer of the divine dwelling madly gushed out. Endless starlight enveloped Gu Xiaoyang's body, making him look like a divine king of the stars. His aura shook the entire universe. On one side was Yi Guchen, who had revealed his identity again. Jin Kuei of the Sword Dynasty, who was born with the aptitude of a saint and had once seriously injured Di Haoten. On the other side was one of the 10 great Gongzi, the seed of the Starry Sword Pavilion, Gu Xiaoyang. Many people knew about the enmity between the two of them. Therefore, all the geniuses in the Sacred Emperor world were paying close attention to this fated battle. At this moment, outside the Saint Emperor world, a great uproar had been set off because of Yi Guchen's identity. So, Jin Kuei is Yi Guchen? The seventh Star Lord's aura trembled. He was obviously shocked. Then, his cold gaze fell on the Sword Dynasty's side. Sword Dynasty? Well done. The seventh Star Lord's tone was cold. Obviously, he believed that the Sword Dynasty was shielding Yi Guchen. Du Bai is Yi Guchen? Did you know? Confusi asked Wu Hongyan in shock. I didn't know. Did any of you know? Wu Hongyan asked. We didn't know either. The heaven prides of the Sword Dynasty shook their heads. Of course, they really didn't know. However, Confusi and Wu Hongyan had known about Yi Guchen's identity for a long time. However, they couldn't let the Starry Sword Pavilion have any evidence against them at this moment. After all, the Sword Dynasty was still under a lot of pressure when facing the Starry Sword Pavilion. The seventh Star Lord's aura was a bit unstable. Obviously, he was quite angry. Seventh Star Lord, the battle between heaven prides hasn't ended yet. Is the Starry Sword Pavilion already blaming us? Elder Qing Song of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion sneered. In fact, Elder Qing Song was also very surprised. That was because he had heard more than once from Jun Xiaoyao that Yi Guchen was a talent with great potential. If that's the case, should the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion protect Yi Guchen and take him in? Elder Qing Song was seriously thinking. However, the battle between Yi Guchen and Gu Xiaoyang had just begun. The outcome was still uncertain. If Yi Guchen was defeated in the end, then there was nothing to think about. However, rumor has it that the immemorial demonic sword, God Devourer, has fallen into his hands. That's a bit troublesome. Elder Qing Song pondered. Elder Qing Song and the Seventh Star Lord weren't the only ones thinking about the immemorial demonic sword. The other 3 sects and sword pavilions were also thinking about the immemorial demonic sword. After all, the God Devourer was a famed immemorial sword. Even if it was a famed sword on the Earth ranking, it was still enough to tempt the Overlord forces. Many forces had already decided to interrogate Yi Guchen after the battle at the Sacred Emperor realm, if he could survive. Yi Guchen, if Manlu knows that you're still alive, he'll be very happy. On the side of the Swallow Cloud dynasty, Yen Changa's expression was complicated. He thought that Feng Manlu had already fallen. At this moment, all the forces and geniuses both inside and outside the Sacred Emperor realm were looking at the Golden Arena. The battle between Yi Guchen and Gu Xiaoyang could be said to be the most eye-catching battle. Everyone was curious. Would Yi Guchen succeed in his revenge, or would Gu Xiaoyang continue to stand at the top? Kill! On the Golden Arena in the void, Yi Guchen used the Divine Movement secret skill and appeared in a flash. Murderous roars burst out from his mouth as 3 sword radiances swept out. It was the 3 unique holy swords. Daluo Astral Seal. Gu Xiaoyang raised his hand and the stellar genuine qi surged. It turned into a dazzling astral seal and pressed down. Rumble! The sword radiances and the astral seal collided and burst out waves. 3 unique combinations: moon falling, star sinking, vast yang break. Yi Guchen's 3 sword radiances merged into one, and the dazzling sword radiance cut through the universe. I, Gu Xiaoyang, will tell you that an ant will always be an ant. Don't even think about overturning the heavens. Gu Xiaoyang raised the 7 stars mysterious god in his hand, and the stellar sword qi burst out. Falling Star's sacred sword. The sword radiance slashed down and crashed down on Yi Guchen's sword move. Overturning the heavens? Who can represent the heavens? You can't represent the heavens. Even if you are the heavens, I will cut through the heavens and shatter the universe. Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered in the wind as the piercingly cold and surging sword qi accompanied his words. Azura sword way, Azura blood sea 18 levels. Yi Guchen's eyes were instantly swallowed by the color of blood. The sword qi turned into a sea of blood and surged out. 18 levels of blood prison rose from the ground. After Yi Guchen regained his identity, he could finally use his previous moves without any scruples. How terrifying would Yi Guchen be when he went all out? No one knew. Perhaps not even Yi Guchen himself. Chapter 1303. For a long time, Yi Guchen had been hiding his identity, so he rarely used some of his methods. Or perhaps he had never used them at all. For example, the 108,000 sword souls and reincarnation sword lotus. For example, the 1,000 deities tribulation sword technique and the innate sword embryo. Any one of these techniques could easily expose Yi Guchen's identity. But now that Yi Guchen's identity had been exposed, he no longer had to worry about anything. He could naturally display his full strength. Seeing Yi Guchen display the Azura sword principle, Gu Xiaoyang felt as if he had returned to the Tianhuang Plains. Gu Xiaoyang had also fought a great battle with Yi Guchen in the Tianhuang Plains. That battle was Gu Xiaoyang's humiliation. He had bullied the weak and in the end, Yi Guchen had taken back the innate sword embryo. That battle had also caused Gu Xiaoyang's reputation to plummet and he was ridiculed by many people. Thinking of all the humiliation he had suffered, Gu Xiaoyang's heart surged with anger. With a bone-chilling look in his eyes, he said, Yi Guchen, today I will use your blood to wash away my humiliation. Gu Xiaoyang's seventh heaven of the divine dwelling realm gushed out. Sword qi crisscrossed the void and turned into a dazzling galaxy. Gu Xiaoyang also displayed the sword domain of the star's sword principle. Starry river illuminating the 9 heavens. Endless starlight fell from the void and turned into countless sword qi that collided with Yi Guchen's Azura blood sea. In an instant, the sword qi vibrated and the collision of the two domains was so powerful that it was as if 2 continents had collided. Rumble! Rumbling roars shook the 9 heavens like thunder. Yi Guchen die! Gu Xiaoyang held the 7-star transformations god in his hand, his heart filled with murderous intent. He swore in his heart that no matter what price he had to pay, he would kill Yi Guchen on the sacred emperor arena. Damn it, it's you! Yi Guchen also gave tit for tat, his momentum not weak in the slightest. The two figures charged towards each other. After more than a year, the two of them finally began their fated battle on the Saint Emperor arena once again. The 9-dragon thunder prison collided with the 7-star illusion god sword, and the violent vibrations turned into environmental waves that swept out. Yi Guchen and Gu Xiaoyang both unleashed their full strength, their killing intent surging. Yi Guchen's sword swung out in a graceful manner. 10 times the amount of true qi surged out, and with the support of the Azura sword Dao's blood-colored sword qi, it was incomparably powerful. As for Gu Xiaoyang, he was like the divine king of the stars. Endless starlight transformed into sword qi that fell down like rain. The two of them were both outstanding individuals, and as they clashed, they attracted the attention of everyone. Everyone wanted to know who would emerge victorious. Astral Emperor's Seal. With a sword in one hand, Gu Xiaoyang fought against Yi Guchen while raising his other hand. Surging star true qi rolled and surged in his palm, finally transforming into a giant silver seal. This was a sealing technique that was even more powerful than the Great Astral Seal, the Astral Emperor's Seal. Suppress. As Gu Xiaoyang's word fell, the Astral Emperor's Seal was like a silver mountain, suppressing Yi Guchen. This little trick is not worth mentioning. Yi Guchen's eyes lit up. The ancient god power in his body surged and gathered in his left hand. Yi Guchen pressed out with his hand as well. The ancient god power surged and condensed into a giant golden seal. It was the ancient god king seal. The golden ancient god king seal and the silver astral emperor's seal collided with each other, producing a buzzing sound that shook the heavens. It was like 2 divine mountains had collided. Rocks flew through the air, and dust flew everywhere. Both of them were sent flying by the impact, but in an instant, They turned around and fought again. Thousand-Star Pilgrimage Sword Technique. Gu Xiaoyang's aura surged. The Star Sword Dao combined with the Emperor-level sword technique, and the power of the Thousand-Star Pilgrimage Sword Technique increased exponentially. In the void around him, tens of thousands of starlight turned into sword qi and froze in the void. Go! Gu Xiaoyang stabbed out with the 7-star transformations. Tens of thousands of starlight sword qi shot out at the same time like a meteor shower. In the face of Gu Xiaoyang's dense and violent attacks, Yi Guqin's expression was calm. He stretched out his hand and grasped the void. It was as if he had turned on a switch, and many sword souls in his body surged out. Sword Sect Unique Skill, 108,000 swords. Yi Guqin let out a long roar. His black hair fluttered, and 108,000 sword souls surged out of his body. The sword souls that had not been used for a long time finally appeared in the world again. The 108,000 sword souls scattered in all directions and clashed with Gu Xiaoyang's sacred star sword technique. Yi Guqin took the opportunity to perform the divine movement secret skill, and his body rushed out like lightning. 8 divinatory diagrams appeared around him at the same time. 8 extremities reincarnation, destruction of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin did not hold back or test the waters. He directly performed his unique skill, wanting to kill Gu Xiaoyang as soon as possible. This fluctuation. Gu Xiaoyang's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly performed his unique defensive skill. Heavenly Star Five-Fold Light Shield. Gu Xiaoyang formed a seal with one hand. His star genuine energy surged and condensed into a huge shield that was 9 feet tall, blocking in front of him. At this moment, Yi Guqin had performed his unique skill. The 8 divinatory diagrams shattered at the same time. 8 different sword energies of different attributes merged and formed a wheel of sword energies with a destructive aura. It pierced through the void and blasted toward Gu Xiaoyang. Boom! The wheel of sword energies collided with the huge silver shield, and an earth-shattering sound burst out. The violent impact of the sword energies directly shattered the shield. Gu Xiaoyang's expression changed, and he hurriedly blocked with his sword. Bang! With another sound, Gu Xiaoyang's body retreated rapidly. His arms trembled violently, and he spat out a small mouthful of blood. Apparently, he was injured. Gu Xiaoyang is injured. I didn't expect Gu Xiaoyang to be the first to be injured. The group of Sky Prides who were watching the battle cried out in surprise. Hearing the discussion around him, Gu Xiaoyang's face darkened. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with one hand and looked coldly at Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's strength was somewhat beyond Gu Xiaoyang's expectations. Again, unique skill of the sword faction, Firmament Sword Seal. Gu Xiaoyang's aura surged even more violently. He wanted to get back at Yi Guqin. He raised his sword, and sword energies gushed out. The sky trembled, and the surging sword energies finally turned into a sky-blue sword seal. Gu Xiaoyang was also a 9th-generation sword faction echelon, and he also had more than one unique skill of the sword faction. Just in time. Unique skill of the sword faction, Reincarnation Sword Lotus. Yi Guqin activated the surging genuine energy of the leakless divine palace. He raised his hand, and countless sword energies gathered on his palm like rivers flowing into the sea, and finally turned into a golden sword lotus. After a long time, Yi Guqin finally displayed the unique skill of the sword faction again. Most importantly, it wasn't an incomplete version of the Reincarnation Sword Lotus, but a complete Reincarnation Sword Lotus with 360 leaves. Previously, even the incomplete Reincarnation Sword Lotus could be considered Yi Guqin's trump card. Now that the complete version of the Reincarnation Sword Lotus was displayed, it was imaginable how powerful it would be. Go! Yi Guqin threw out the Reincarnation Sword Lotus. The Reincarnation Sword Lotus drew a dazzling arc of light and collided with Gu Xiaoyang's Firmament Sword Seal. For a moment, the world trembled. Chapter 1304. Yi Guqin and Gu Xiaoyang were both members of the 9th generation of the Sword Sect. At that moment, they were also using the ultimate techniques of the Sword Sect. The Reincarnation Sword Lotus was beautiful, but it also carried fatal danger and murderous intent. The firmament sword print was majestic as if it could suppress the heavens. The two ultimate techniques of the sword sect collided, and the sound shook the heavens and earth. It was as if the entire sacred imperial world was trembling. Violent shockwaves swept out. Apart from a few sky prides who were able to watch the battle from the golden arena, the rest of the sky prides were thrown far away by the shockwaves. Their blood was boiling in their chests. So powerful! Is this the clash of the top sky prides? I can't even withstand the shockwaves. One of the sky prides was terrified. No one was surprised by Gu Xiaoyang's strength. After all, he was from an overlord force and had received the best training since he was young. However, Yiguchen was a sky pride who rose from a low-level dynasty. He was strong enough to fight against many sky prides from overlords. Many sky prides from other dynasties were impressed by his perseverance. At that moment, everyone's attention was focused on the center of the smoke. Yiguchen and Gu Xiaoyang both had blood flowing down from the corners of their mouths. They didn't stop their attacks and continued to fight against each other. There was no way out for them in this battle. Either you die or I die. Blood feud would not end until death. Let's try this move again. Gu Xiaoyang raised his sword, and a crimson sword energy of extreme yang surged out. Ultimate technique of the sword sect, sun-slashing brilliant void sword aura. That was another ultimate technique of the sword sect that Gu Xiaoyang knew. It was very powerful and seemed to be able to break the sun. Ultimate technique of the sword sect? I have more. Yiguchen knew 3 ultimate techniques of the sword sect and was not any weaker than Gu Xiaoyang. He pointed his sword at the sky and pointed at the ground. Heaven and earth merged, and yin and yang gathered together. It was as if he had gathered the power of heaven and earth into his sword. It was the sacred sword of heaven and earth. The golden sword radiance stood between heaven and earth and swept out. That powerful fluctuation was not any weaker than Gu Xiaoyang's sun-slashing brilliant void sword aura. The golden sword ray and the crimson sword ray collided fiercely, causing the void to explode and vibrate. Sword chi was in a frenzy, and even the clouds in the sky were scattered. Yiguchen retreated, but he was still hurt by the scorching sword chi. Blood flowed from the web between his thumb and forefinger, and there were scorched marks on his arm. Of course, Gu Xiaoyang wasn't in a good condition either. There was a sword wound on his shoulder that was so deep that his bones could be seen. You have another sword faction loss technique? Gu Xiaoyang's eyes were as cold as ice. Because he had only seen Ye's Yi's sword soul and reincarnation sword lotus. I'm no longer the person I used to be in the infinite wilderness plain. Next, there will be more surprises for you. Yiguchen sneered. You're courting death. Gu Xiaoyang's. He could not accept Yiguchen's tone, which made him feel humiliated. If I had killed Yiguchen back in the Tianhuang Plains under the pressure of Jun Xiaoyao, I wouldn't be in so much trouble now. Gu Xiaoyang was a little annoyed. In the beginning, when he took away Yiguchen's innate sword embryo, he did not care about the ant at all. That was because the gap between him and a low-level genius from a low-level dynasty was too big. It was because of Gu Xiaoyang's neglect and disregard that led to the current situation. However, there was no point in regretting it now. Gu Xiaoyang was determined to kill. Gu Xiaoyang took 7 steps and pointed at the void. He performed the Starry Sword Pavilion's Emperor-level movement technique, the Big Dipper star-stepping steps. Gu Xiaoyang's aura skyrocketed with every step he took. After taking 7 steps, his aura became even more powerful. He swung his sword at Yiguchen. Starlight Origin Sword Technique. That was another Emperor-level sword technique that Gu Xiaoyang had. At that moment, he no longer held back and performed it with all his might. Starlight gathered, causing the 7-star phantom sword to shine brightly. The sword light was as bright as the stars. Yiguchen's reaction was also very agile. He performed the ultimate move of the godly sword lightning controlling chant, Heavenly Execution. Moreover, it was not just a move, but also the power of the lightning sword technique. In an instant, the lightning flashed and rumbled. The blades of the swords collided. Lightning and starlight flashed, accompanied by the sound of metal clashing. Both sides were injured. However, in terms of physical strength, Yi Guqin was superior to Gu Xiaoyang, not to mention that he had the ancient god's heart sealed in his body. The ancient god's blood could continuously nourish his injured body. Gu Xiaoyang's physical strength was not weak, but in comparison, he was weaker than Yi Guqin. Boom! Yi Guqin and Gu Xiaoyang were like two huge stars that collided and separated in an instant. Then they collided and separated again. Their speed was so fast that they even left after images. It was a dazzling sight. Some of the weaker geniuses could only see the sparks from the collision of the blades of the swords. It was difficult for them to catch a glimpse of their figures. Heaven's punishment, thunder, prison, imprison. Yi Guqin activated the domain of the lightning sword technique. Suddenly, the blazing ball of lightning in the void shot out countless bolts of lightning. It was like a cage that imprisoned the void and Gu Xiaoyang's body. It's over. Gu Xiaoyang is at a disadvantage in terms of sword principle. He only has the star's sword principle, but Yi Guqin has 4 types of sword principles. It's terrifying. Seeing that Gu Xiaoyang was imprisoned, the surrounding geniuses secretly shook their heads. In terms of sword principle, Gu Xiaoyang was indeed inferior to Yi Guqin. At the same time, many people secretly looked at Chu Xuanjun. As a sword king constitution, could his sword principle be compared to Yi Guqin's? Some people were curious. However, the most important battle now was still on Gu Xiaoyang. If he was really defeated by Yi Guqin would very likely replace him and become one of the new top 10 young masters. Damn it, how did this kid comprehend so many sword principles? Gu Xiaoyang looked at the cage-like lightning purgatory in front of him with a sullen face. When he was in the infinite planes, Yi Guqin did not have the lightning sword principle. Obviously, he had comprehended it later. Even though Gu Xiaoyang hated Yi Guqin to the core, he had to admit that Yi Guqin had indeed surpassed many geniuses of the overlord forces in terms of sword principle. However, if he wants to defeat me like this, he's too naive. Gu Xiaoyang formed a hand seal and began to use a secret skill. As a genius of an overlord force, he did not lack any trump cards or secret skills. 9 stars secret skill. As Gu Xiaoyang activated the 9 stars secret skill, 9 lumps of star-like light appeared around him. At the same time, the density of Gu Xiaoyang's genuine qi rose steadily. In the end, it soared 9 times in front of everyone's shocked eyes. This was an extremely terrifying amplification technique. The 9 stars secret skill. It's definitely the 9 stars secret skill of the Starry Sword Pavilion. It's said to be one of the top 10 Archean secret skills, the secret combat skill. It's said that the real secret combat skill can increase one's combat strength by 100 times after it is activated. It's extremely terrifying, but it seems to have been lost. The 9 stars secret skill is an incomplete version of the secret combat skill. It can only increase one's strength by 9 times, but it's already extremely terrifying. Some geniuses who knew a little about the 9 stars secret skill of the Starry Sword Pavilion could not help but exclaim in horror. Obviously, Gu Xiaoyang had started to get serious when he activated the 9 stars secret skill. Chapter 1305. The 9-star secret art, one of the top 10 ancient secret arts, is it a remnant of the secret art of battle? Yi Guqin's eyes dimmed when he heard the discussions of the heaven prides around him. The top 10 ancient secret arts each represented the limits of a domain. For example, Yi Guqin's sky-devouring secret art was the Tao of devouring and refining. The divine movement secret art was the Tao of extreme speed. And the secret art of battle was the Tao of attack. How terrifying would it be to increase one's battle strength by 100 times? It could be said that if Yi Guqin could display the secret art of battle, under the premise of 100-fold increase in battle strength, he could kill Gu Xiaoyang with a single sword strike without any suspense. But perhaps because the secret art of battle was too heaven-defying, there was almost no complete secret art of battle that had been circulated. The 9-star secret art of the Starry Sword Pavilion was just something that some important figures had extracted and comprehended from some remnant chapters. But even if it wasn't as heaven-defying as a 100-fold increase in battle strength, A ninefold increase in battle strength was already very powerful. In a great battle, it would play a decisive role. In the Starry Sword Pavilion, the 9-star secret art was never taught to outsiders, and only some elite disciples could practice it. Of course, Gu Xiaoyang was also qualified to practice it. At this moment, Gu Xiaoyang's aura had skyrocketed by 9 times. His true qi soared into the sky, and the heaven's punishment thunder prison seemed somewhat unstable. Gu Xiaoyang said in a cold tone, "Yi Guchen, you are quite capable to force me to use the 9 stars secret technique. However, this is the end of it. Even if you have transformed into the leakless divine palace, your genuine qi will not be able to suppress me." Gu Xiaoyang's words were indeed the truth. Yi Guchen's true cultivation level was only at the 4th layer of the divine dwelling realm, which was 3 levels lower than Gu Xiaoyang. He relied on the leakless divine palace to be on par with Gu Xiaoyang in terms of true qi. And now, Gu Xiaoyang had displayed the 9-star secret art, and his true qi had skyrocketed by 9 times, which in turn suppressed Yi Guchen. Falling Star's Sacred Sword. Gu Xiaoyang clenched the 7-star secret god and slashed out again. But the power of this sword strike was completely different from the previous one. The sword radiance pierced through the air and directly broke through the imprisonment of the heavenly punishment thunder prison. Then, Gu Xiaoyang stepped into the air and used the Big Dipper star stepping steps. His figure swept towards Yi Guchen at an extremely fast speed. Polaris Cross Sword. Gu Xiaoyang swung his sword horizontally and vertically. A dazzling and sharp cross-shaped sword projection shot toward Yi Guchen. Baji Reincarnation Sword Technique, Heaven's Extremity. Yi Guchen hurriedly swung his sword down vertically, and the condensed sword qi slashed down from the sky at the same time. However, in this clash of extreme moves, Yi Guchen felt a terrifying shockwave far stronger than before exploding. He retreated rapidly and coughed out a mouthful of blood. Gu Xiaoyang's combat ability was also extremely terrifying. He flashed over. Among the 9 clusters of starlight around him, a cluster of starlight suddenly broke through the air. Yi Guchen held his sword horizontally to block the attack. The cluster of starlight exploded as he retreated once again. However, the other 8 clusters of starlight also charged over. Boom, 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 boom. 8 loud explosions shook the heavens. Gu Xiaoyang's movements were too fast. Moreover, the 8 clusters of starlight landed on Yi Guchen almost at the same time. Cough. Yi Guchen coughed out blood and fell back into the arena with some blood flowing out of his body. Yi Guchen is also injured. That's normal. Gu Xiaoyang used the 9 stars secret technique to increase his combat power by 9 times. No one would feel good if they were in his shoes. Seeing the situation before them, some sky prides commented, "Yi Guchen." Yan Wushuang's heart instantly tightened. She knew that the proud and unyielding youth would never admit defeat and submit to her. He would either win or die. Princess Fengxi, Su Jiqing, Jian Jinghong, and the other sword sons also had their hearts in their mouths. "Yi Guchen, is that all you've got?" Gu Zun's gaze was deep. If Yi Guchen lost in the end, he would be very disappointed. "Heh? An ant will always be an ant. Don't you think so, Jun Xiaoyao?" Chu Xuanzhen put his hands behind his back and spoke in a condescending tone. "Who knows? Maybe he'll surprise everyone," Jun Xiaoyao said with a calm smile. He had always admired Yi Guchen, who was an incredible swordsman. Now, more than half of the sky prides in the entire Saints' Land of Inheritance began to support Gu Xiaoyang. They believed that Gu Xiaoyang could win in the end. Not only the sky prides, but many forces outside the sacred imperial realm also thought the same. He even used the 9 stars secret technique. It seems that the outcome is more or less decided. Gu Xiaoyang hasn't even used his innate ability yet, some warriors from the forces that sided with the Starry Sword Pavilion said. "Don't be so sure. Yi Guchen is no small fry. He is the only one among the younger generation who can injure Di Haoyan to such an extent," someone else retorted. "Do you think I don't know? That borrowing sword from heaven is not something that Yi Guchen can use casually. He must have paid a great price for it," some warriors said faintly. Outside the sacred imperial realm, there was an uproar because of the battle between the two. Yi Guqin is capable to be able to force Gu Xiaoyang to use the 9 stars secret technique. Unfortunately, he can't change the outcome, the 7-star lord said coldly. Confuzi, Wu Hongyan, and the others looked nervous. If Yi Guqin lost this time, there would be no way for him to survive. In the golden arena of the sacred domain's inheritance, Gu Xiaoyang stood in the sky with the 7 stars mysterious god in his hand. He looked down at Yi Guqin, who was standing in the arena, and said mockingly, "Do you see, Yi Guqin? This is the gap between you and me. Even after a year, I can still suppress you." Ah! Yi Guqin laughed. "What are you laughing at?" Gu Xiaoyang raised his eyebrows. "It's just a warm-up, but you think you've already won. Isn't it funny?" As Yi Guqin spoke, the sealed ancient god's heart in his body was beating loudly. Drops of ancient god's blood merged into his body. His injured body was recovering at an astonishing speed, and his aura had become stronger once again. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes twitched when he saw this. Even he didn't know how Yi Guqin cultivated such a powerful body. "Humph, let's see if you can recover after I kill you." Gu Xiaoyang's figure broke through the sky and slashed down with his sword. Ultimate Star Stream Cut. As the sword slashed down, it was as if thousands of stars were falling. With the enhancement of the 9 stars secret technique, it could split the earth into 2. Seeing Gu Xiaoyang's powerful move, Yi Guqin focused his mind and used his ultimate move. A terrifying sword aura flowed around him. A pair of sword wings spread out from his back. The sword aura burst out and roared in the void. Because he was hiding his identity, he hadn't used his trump card for a long time. Now, it appeared in the world again. 10,000 gods tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin stomped on the ground. The sword wings on his back vibrated. He rushed up and hit the sky. Chapter 1306. The 10,000 deity tribulation had always been Yi Guqin's trump card. Moreover, the 10,000 deity tribulation was different from other sword techniques. It could increase in power with Yi Guqin's strength. In other words, the 10,000 deity tribulation could always accompany Yi Guqin and be his trump card. At this moment, the 10,000 deity tribulation displayed by Yi Guqin, whose cultivation had increased, was far more powerful than before. The sword wings on Yi Guqin's back spread out. Sword chi rushed between heaven and earth, and his momentum was extremely fierce. He rose against the momentum and rushed into the sky, colliding with Gu Xiaoyang, who was slashing down. Boom! A loud boom shook the world. Violent air waves and starlight splashed in all directions. The violent collision seemed to make heaven and earth lose its color and the sun and moon dim. The two figures suddenly retreated. Their arms were bleeding and their chi and blood were surging. Then, without any pause, they charged again. Every collision would burst out a monstrous wave of sword chi. Some of the sky prides with lower cultivation could not even withstand the aftermath. It could be said that a battle between sky prides of this level was very rare, even in the entire South Horizon region. Yi Guqin's current strength was truly at the top level of the younger generation in the South Horizon region. However, Gu Xiaoyang's strength was not to be outdone. Especially with the support of the 9 stars secret technique, any of Gu Xiaoyang's moves could increase his strength by 9 times. Every time they collided, Yi Guqin was under great pressure and his body would be injured. Because after the 9-fold increase, Gu Xiaoyang's strength was too strong. If it were any other sky prides, they would probably be killed directly. However, Yi Guqin relied on his strong physique to only be injured. Of course, Gu Xiaoyang was not in a good state either. Yi Guqin's leakless divine palace could also burst out 10 times his true chi. The two of them could be said to be exchanging injury for injury. It was just a matter of who could last longer. Yi Guqin, in the past, present, and future, you will be trampled under my feet. Surrender! Gu Xiaoyang's eyes were spewing flames of anger. He had not been able to kill Yi Guqin after so long, which made him furious and ashamed. If this dragged on for too long, even if he managed to kill Yi Guqin in the end, he would not be able to wash his reputation. Heavenly Wolf star slash. Gu Xiaoyang once again performed his most powerful skill. His star true chi gushed out. Starlight gathered around him, finally forming a Heavenly Wolf star chart. Kill! Gu Xiaoyang let out a murderous roar. The 7 stars' mysterious god in his hand swept out, accompanied by a Heavenly Wolf's furious howl. In the face of Gu Xiaoyang's ultimate move, Yi Guqin once again displayed the god-slaying sword technique. Deity's Cry. The deity slash slaying star slash. This was also a powerful sword emperor sword thousand emperor sword. Boom! It was as if a great destruction had occurred in the void as countless sword chi rushed in all directions. Yi Guqin coughed up another mouthful of blood. Sword wounds appeared on his body. Gu Xiaoyang was the same. Even with the 9 stars secret technique, it was impossible for him to be unscathed. He would also be injured in such an extreme collision. It's really a showdown. These two are rare opponents among the younger generation of the South Horizon region. I'm really curious about the outcome of this battle, Dao Wuming murmured. On the other side, Gu Zun was also watching. Yi Guqin, you can't lose to Gu Xiaoyang. Otherwise, how can I defeat you? Gu Zun's voice was hoarse as he muttered to himself. He absolutely did not want to see Yi Guqin lose to Gu Xiaoyang. He also wanted to settle things with Yi Guqin personally. Clang, clang, clang. The battle was still going on in the Saint Emperor arena. Sparks flew as the swords collided. Again, Heavenly Jade Meteor slash. Gu Xiaoyang pushed his strength to the limit and poured his true chi into the 7 stars slash. The entire sword seemed to be dyed with starlight and was extremely dazzling. He swung the sword like a galaxy falling from the 9th heaven. The starlight was dazzling, and there was endless killing intent in it. When Yi Guqin saw this, he flipped his hand and used his ultimate move again. 10,000 Gods Tribulation, Fall of the Masses. The second move of the 10,000 Gods Tribulation was performed. The sword chi was magnificent, reflecting the blood of all living beings. Blood flowed and all living beings cried out. This move was extremely powerful and carried with it a tragic aura. Boom! The 2 swords collided, and the sword chi shook the 9th heaven. The killing intent of the 10,000 Gods Tribulation completely exploded. Gu Xiaoyang's body shook violently, and then he flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Blood spilled out. Gu Xiaoyang is at a disadvantage? Seeing this, everyone inside and outside the Saint Emperor realm widened their eyes. They didn't expect that Gu Xiaoyang, who had the 9 stars secret technique, could not kill Yi Guqin. Instead, he was injured again. Outside the Saint Emperor realm, the 7th star lord, who was shrouded in endless starlight, was somewhat unstable. The space around him was shaking. Everyone knew that the Saint of the Starry Sword Pavilion was probably not in a good mood at the moment. Humph, it's not the end yet? The 7th star lord's tone was extremely cold. He still didn't think that Gu Xiaoyang would lose, because the 9 stars secret technique was only one of his trump cards. In the arena of the Saint's inheritance, Yi Guqin and Gu Xiaoyang stood opposite each other. Yi Guqin was also injured in the collision. Blood flowed from his arm and dripped down along the blade to the ground. However, in comparison, Gu Xiaoyang seemed to be in a more difficult situation. He stared at Yi Guqin like a poisonous snake that was about to devour its prey. No one can defeat me, Gu Xiaoyang. No one. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes were scarlet. He held the 7 stars transformations with both hands, and the 9 stars secret technique was fully activated. Ultimate Star Stream Cut. Sirius Star Slash. Tianxian Meteor Slash. Gu Xiaoyang used 3 ultimate moves at the same time. It was worth noting that each of the 3 moves could be used as a killing move. At this moment, the 3 ultimate moves were used at the same time, and their power was combined. One could imagine how destructive it was. It was as if it could shake the world. Gu Xiaoyang combined the 3 ultimate moves into one. Yi Guqin, die. Gu Xiaoyang dashed out, and the sword light seemed to have turned into a ray of starlight that could split heaven and earth. It slashed toward Yi Guqin with an unstoppable force. He's too strong. Countless geniuses around gasped. They thought that if they were in Gu Xiaoyang's shoes, they would probably be killed by that sword. Even geniuses at the level of Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, and Jun Xiaoyao frowned. It was obvious that this move was not something they could underestimate. Everyone looked at Yi Guqin, wondering how he would deal with Gu Xiaoyang's ultimate move. Now that's interesting. Yi Guqin's lips curled into a faint smile. He was calm and collected. Gu Xiaoyang saw Yi Guqin smile and felt that it was very unpleasant. He said coldly, "You can still smile when you're about to die. I'll let you smile in hell then. Even the heavens can't take my life, Yi Guqin, let alone you." Yi Guqin also held his sword with both hands, and a terrifying sword chi shook the void. Vaguely, there seemed to be the silhouettes of a Buddha and a demon emperor behind him. Third style of 10,000 deities tribulation, demon Buddha's tears. Yi Guqin looked up to the sky and roared. The Buddha and the demon emperor shed a tear at the same time, falling on the 9-dragon thunder prison. He slashed out with his sword, and it was as if he could destroy 100,000 voids. The ultimate moves collided. Who would win? Chapter 1307. It was Yi Guqin's third move, Demon Buddha's Tears. Gu Xiaoyang's 3 ultimate moves combined into one. Both of them had used their most powerful moves. At this moment, when they collided, it was as if 2 great stars had collided and endless ripples were emitted. The terrifying collision didn't seem like 2 geniuses of the divine dwelling stage, but more like 2 sovereigns attacking each other. The geniuses who were watching the battle were also pushed back dozens of feet by the shockwaves. One could imagine how intense the collision was. Smoke and dust rose like a mushroom cloud, spreading in all directions. Countless gazes, both inside and outside the sacred imperial realm, pierced into the battle like needles. They wanted to know the result of the collision too much. Because this move was likely to be the end of the battle. Under the nervous gazes of countless people, Yi Guqin's figure was the first to break free. He withdrew from the smoke and dust, with blood flowing from his body. But most importantly, Yi Guqin had a cracked golden armor on his body. It was the immovable ancient God King armor. At the last moment of the collision, Yi Guqin brought out the immovable ancient God King armor to help him block a lot of the impact and damage. Otherwise, Yi Guqin would have suffered even more injuries. The immovable ancient God King armor on his body was already cracked, which showed how intense the collision was. Yi Guqin doesn't seem to be seriously injured. Could it be that he still has the upper hand this time? If that's the case, then Gu Xiaoyang is probably in a bad situation. Seeing Yi Guqin's state, the surrounding people suddenly burst into an uproar. Everyone thought that Yi Guqin should have been seriously injured under the collision of such extreme moves. However, the situation was the opposite. Yi Guqin didn't suffer any serious injuries. That's great. Yan Wushuang, Jiling, and the others all had joy on their faces. It's not that simple. Gu Xiaoyang isn't someone who can be dealt with so easily. Jun Xiaoyao frowned secretly. Because of the grudges between their forces, Jun Xiaoyao and Gu Xiaoyang had many conflicts. Therefore, Jun Xiaoyao also knew that Gu Xiaoyang was definitely not that easy to deal with. Yi Guqin also knew, but there was no joy on his face. He stared at the place where the smoke and dust drifted away. A gust of wind blew, scattering the smoke and dust. Gu Xiaoyang's figure also appeared in everyone's eyes. When they saw Gu Xiaoyang's figure, everyone's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They saw Gu Xiaoyang held his sword with a calm face. There was a crack between his eyebrows, revealing an eye. This eye was dark blue like the starry sky, flickering with specks of crystal light. It was mysterious and deep, giving people a strange feeling. At this moment, starlight flowed out of this strange third eye and condensed into a starry sky barrier in front of Gu Xiaoyang, blocking the impact of the collision. That's Gu Xiaoyang's innate ability, stellar eyes. One of the geniuses exclaimed. Because the battle was so intense, many people almost forgot that Gu Xiaoyang, as a 7th grade immovable star, also had a immovable star. The immovable star was a star given to Gu Xiaoyang by the heavens. It was also one of his trump cards. What a surprise! I didn't expect that an ant could force me to use so many trump cards. However, the game should end here. Gu Xiaoyang's face was as cold as the abyss. He didn't say anything else and directly activated the power of the immovable star. Divine light of the starry dome. Bright starlight gathered in the immovable star, then turned into a blazing beam of light and shot out. Everywhere it passed, even the void seemed to be pierced. That was one of the ways to use the immovable star. Starlight gathered, and endless divine light burst out. Yi Guqin hurriedly blocked with his sword. The divine light bombarded the blade, and a powerful force exploded. Yi Guqin's figure quickly retreated. Gu Xiaoyang held his sword and took the opportunity to attack again. At the same time, the immovable star was still shooting out divine light. It could be said that Gu Xiaoyang was definitely going all out this time. Boom, boom, boom. The divine light of the immovable star pierced through heaven and earth and swept out in all directions, leaving no gap. Even Yi Guqin couldn't completely block it. His body was hit by the divine light of the immovable king armor. Even the immovable king armor on his body was pierced through, leaving a bloody hole in his body. So powerful! Gu Xiaoyang is going all out this time. He's going all out. He's even using his innate ability. Yi Guqin is in danger. The public opinion once again shifted from Yi Guqin to Gu Xiaoyang. One had to admit that this battle was full of twists and turns. No one was weaker than the other. Come on. Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling's hearts tightened again. The sword masters of the Sword Dynasty were also praying in their hearts. Outside the sacred imperial realm, the seventh Star Lord of the Starry Sword Pavilion and the others relaxed. The scales of victory were tilted toward Gu Xiaoyang. On the other hand, Confuzi, Wu Hongyan and the others on the Sword Dynasty's side were extremely worried. The battle situation changed rapidly. Yi Guqin, who had the upper hand a moment ago, was once again in danger. Boom, boom, boom. The divine light of the immovable star shot out one beam after another without stopping. Each beam of light was enough to easily kill a third-layer divine dwelling heaven pride. But at this moment, they were all focused on Yi Guqin. Pif! A divine light of the immovable star pierced Yi Guqin's shoulder again. Yi Guqin, you no longer have the power to resist. Gu Xiaoyang's lips curved into a cold smile. He was extremely confident in his eyes of the star. It was enough to completely suppress Yi Guqin. Oh, it's too early to say that. Yi Guqin didn't care. 5 elements sword Dao, cosmos sword formation of the 5 emperors. Yi Guqin once again brought out another peerless sword Dao. It was the 5 elements sword Dao that he hadn't used for a long time. Of course, the cosmos sword formation of the 5 emperors matched it. Yi Guqin could now perfectly display the power of the low-grade Earth-class sword formation. Emperor Jin, Emperor Qing, Emperor He, Emperor Qi, and Emperor Huang. 5 sword formations rose into the air, blocking the divine light that filled the sky. In addition to the 5-element sword Dao's own sword Dao domain, the 5-element sword domain gave Yi Guqin a chance to catch his breath. And this was the opportunity to counterattack. Azura Blood Sea kill? Yi Guqin used the 5-element sword domain and the cosmos sword formation of the 5 emperors to defend, and the Azura Blood Sea to suppress Gu Xiaoyang. Starry River illuminates the 9 heavens. Gu Xiaoyang also activated the star's sword Dao domain to collide with Yi Guqin's domain. At the same time, he activated the stellar eyes to the extreme again. The glaring divine light of the stellar dome seemed to melt the void. It's useless, Gu Xiaoyang. This move will end your life. Yi Guqin's eyes shone with a cold light as he began to activate his power. The Azura Blood Sea's domain gradually overlapped with the 5-element sword domain. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying crushing force burst forth, as if it could destroy all the stars in the sky. What kind of move is this? Gu Xiaoyang's face changed for the first time. He was shocked. Not only him, but the surrounding sky prides who were watching the battle were also shocked. That technique again! Huang Qianxiu's eyes were blazing like 2 small suns. This technique was exactly what he wanted to get from Yi Guqin. Princess Luoho, who had also seen this technique, trembled slightly. The power of this technique was still fresh in her memory. Of course, there was another person who was very surprised. It was Chu Xuanzhen. He doesn't have the Sword King constitution. How can he integrate the Sword Dao, let alone the Sword Domain? Chu Xuanzhen's face turned pale. He could not believe it. The Sword Dao integration technique was Chu Xuanzhen's trump card. How did Yi Guqin do it? Chapter 1308. It was extremely difficult to fuse the sword principles. Not everyone could do it. Chu Xuanzhen was able to do it because of his special body constitution, the Sword King body. However, even with the Sword King body, it was difficult for Chu Xuanzhen to fuse the sword domains. The fusion of the sword principle domains was more difficult than the sword principles themselves. At this moment, Yi Guqin's ultimate move could be said to have shocked everyone. That kind of power was truly shocking. The power of the 18 levels of the Azura Blood Sea and the 5 elements sword domain overlapped and crushed the void like a millstone. It was as if nothing could stop the destructive power of the ultimate sword domain. Most importantly, it was only the fusion of the 2 sword domains. Yi Guqin had not fully unleashed the power of the ultimate sword domain. However, even with the fusion of the 2 sword domains, the power was shocking. Gu Xiaoyang's expression changed. His star sword principle domain, star river illuminating the 9 heavens, was broken by the ultimate sword domain without any suspense. Not only that, but the power of the ultimate sword domain continued to press down on Gu Xiaoyang. Starry Sky Barrier. Gu Xiaoyang hurriedly activated the stellar eyes and used a defensive move. Dazzling starlight flowed out of the stellar eyes and turned into a starry sky barrier, trying to block Yi Guqin's ultimate move. Rumble. The power of the ultimate sword domain collided with the starry sky barrier. It was like Mars colliding with Earth, bursting out huge waves. In the terrifying collision, the starry sky barrier made a cracking sound and cracks spread out. Break! Yi Guqin once again activated the power of the ultimate sword domain. The fierce and overbearing dual sword principle domain directly broke through the starry sky barrier. Star Dome Divine Light. Gu Xiaoyang's expression changed drastically. An explosive light beam shot out from the stellar eyes. Rumble. A huge explosion burst out and swept across the sky. Gu Xiaoyang blocked with his sword. His body was sent flying and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His clothes were torn and he fell heavily on the golden arena. Looking at Gu Xiaoyang, who had been severely injured, all the sky prides fell into a dead silence, unable to utter a single word. Just now, Yi Guqin was suppressed by Gu Xiaoyang's stellar eyes and was in danger. Most people thought that Gu Xiaoyang would win. In the end, not long after, the situation was reversed. Yi Guqin used a powerful move to turn the situation around once again. Isn't this battle a little too intense? Many geniuses felt this way. They all felt that this trip to the Holy Imperial Realm was worth it. It was a rare opportunity for them to be able to observe such a battle between geniuses. Outside of the Sacred Emperor world, some of the big shots were surprised when they saw Yi Guqin's ultimate sword domain move. Why do I feel that this technique is similar to the forbidden technique of the Celestial Mountain Sword clan? Could it be that Yi Guqin is related to the Tian Shan sword tribe? I don't think so. Everyone knows that Yi Guqin was born in a low-level dynasty. How could he be related to the Celestial Mountain Sword clan? The saint of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion, Elder Qing Song, was also surprised. It is indeed similar to the technique of the Celestial Mountain Sword clan, but it is much weaker. This young man keeps surprising people. Elder Qing Song thought to himself. To be honest, even Elder Qing Song was tempted by such a talent. If Yi Guqin could be nurtured by the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion, how far would he grow in the future? Wouldn't it be almost certain that he would become a saint? After all, Yi Guqin's reputation as a natural-born saint had already spread far and wide. Sigh, no matter what, Yi Guqin has to win this battle first before he can talk about the future. Elder Qing Song shook his head slightly. The battle was not over yet. No one knew who would win and who would lose in the end. In the arena of the saint's inheritance, Yi Guqin stood in the air with his black hair fluttering in the wind. He held the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand, looking like a grandmaster. Although he was also injured, his awe-inspiring aura was eye-catching. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoyang struggled to get up in the arena. He coughed out a mouthful of blood and stared at Yiguchen in disbelief. He did not expect Yiguchen to have such a powerful trump card. Now, do you still have the confidence you had before? Yiguchen's eyes were cold. Previously, Gu Xiaoyang had said that he could kill him at will. But now? Who was more embarrassed? Hearing this, Gu Xiaoyang's face turned livid. He did not want to admit that Yiguchen was stronger than him. He did not want to admit that he was at a disadvantage. However, the current situation was like a slap to his face. He had to admit it even if he did not want to. Now, I'll send you on your way, Yiguchen said indifferently. He did not bother to humiliate Gu Xiaoyang. After all, he was not that kind of person. However, at this moment, Gu Xiaoyang suddenly laughed. At first, he sneered softly, but in the end, he looked up to the sky and laughed. What's going on? Is Gu Xiaoyang crazy? He must have had a mental breakdown. Some geniuses saw Gu Xiaoyang's state and secretly shook their heads. However, Yiguchen frowned slightly. Sometimes, crazy people were even more terrifying. Gu Xiaoyang stared at Yiguchen with his blood-red eyes and said, "Do you think I've lost and have no trump cards? You're wrong. Are the opportunities that I've comprehended these days all for nothing?" Gu Xiaoyang's words enlightened Yiguchen. It turned out that Gu Xiaoyang still had a trump card. It was the Saint King's inheritance that he had obtained these days. With my strength, I'm still far from being able to use 1,000th of the Saint King's inheritance's power. But in order to kill you, I have no scruples. Gu Xiaoyang's expression was ferocious. There was no longer any of his previous scheming, and it was as if he had gone mad. Vast star stream. Gu Xiaoyang roared, and the stars in the sky seemed to tremble. Endless starlight poured down like rivers returning to the sea, gathering in his body. Gu Xiaoyang's aura also began to rise, directly rising from the 7th layer of the divine dwelling to the 9th layer of the divine dwelling. He was only a step away from the venerables of the heavenly palace. Everyone gasped in astonishment as they watched the changes on Gu Xiaoyang's side. Gu Xiaoyang had already used the 9-star secret technique, and now his strength had increased again. It was simply crazy. To Gu Xiaoyang, this kind of suicidal blessing would also cause irreversible damage. But at this moment, Gu Xiaoyang's eyes had already turned red. Either you die or I die. He couldn't care less. Gu Xiaoyang had not yet made a move, but his body had already begun to bleed. Blood soaked his clothes as if he was dyed in blood. This is the vast star Saint King's secret technique. Yiguchen, you must die today. Gu Xiaoyang roared in a hoarse voice, filled with endless hatred. Chapter 1309. As soon as the name Vast Star Saint King came out, there was an uproar inside and outside the sacred imperial world, because that was a well-known Saint King expert in the Nantian region. No one thought that the inheritance of Vast Star Saint King would be in the sacred imperial world, and it was obtained by Gu Xiaoyang. Dugu Qiuma frowned. He had obtained the inheritance of Azura Saint King in the Azura Bloody Road of the Moro dynasty. Only those who had obtained the inheritance of a Saint King knew how powerful it was. And Vast Star Saint King's strength was no weaker than Azura Saint King. I wonder if Gu Xiaoyang has obtained the domain inheritance of Vast Star Saint King. If he has, my situation is not good. Dugu Qiuma frowned. The power of the domain was exclusive to Saint King experts. For example, Dugu Qiuma had obtained the Azura Saint King's domain, the Yellow Spring Blood River. If Gu Xiaoyang had also obtained the domain inheritance of Vast Star Saint King, then Yiguchen's situation would be even more troublesome. He has even displayed the Saint King's inheritance. Gu Xiaoyang has done his best. But it seems that Gu Xiaoyang has only displayed it reluctantly. After all, the time he spent comprehending it is too short. I wonder if Gu Xiaoyang can't hold on first, or if Yiguchen is killed first. The current battle situation was a little confusing. Both inside and outside the sacred imperial world were discussing it. However, Yiguchen, who was in the middle of the battle, only raised his eyebrows slightly. There was not much change in his expression. Saint King's inheritance, Gu Xiaoyang. This should be your last trump card, Yi Guqin said indifferently. So what? It's enough to kill you. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes were cold. Vast star returned to stream, star returned to yuan. Gu Xiaoyang stomped his foot, and the void shook. He was like a cannonball, rushing towards Yi Guqin. With a swing of his sword, thousands of starlight gathered, and the fluctuations were extremely powerful. Gu Xiaoyang's aura had reached the 9th level of the Divine Palace, and he was only one step away from the Sovereign Realm. Although Yi Guqin had the seamless Divine Palace and possessed 10 times the true qi, he still couldn't let his guard down when facing Gu Xiaoyang. Similarly, he brandished his sword horizontally. The dazzling sword radiance clashed with Gu Xiaoyang. Boom! With just one strike, Yi Guqin was sent flying backward, coughing up blood. Gu Xiaoyang's strength was more than a few times stronger than before. Seeing that Yi Guqin was at a disadvantage in that exchange, the crowd was once again in an uproar. Could it be that the tables had turned? Yi Guqin's expression did not change. He did not show any signs of panic. Ancient God's body. He summoned his ancient God body, and his body grew to 9 feet. His physical strength increased by 8 times. At the same time, the ancient god's immovable king armor appeared once again. At this moment, Yi Guqin seemed to have transformed into a golden sword god, capable of slaying gods and demons. With Gu Xiaoyang's current state, he definitely won't be able to fully utilize the power of the vast Star Sage King's inheritance. Moreover, he won't be able to hold on for long. Looking at Gu Xiaoyang's gradually cracking body, Yi Guqin muttered in his heart. Right now, Gu Xiaoyang was like a cracked porcelain. As long as he could drag it out, he would be able to defeat him. As long as he could stall, Yi Guqin would not be able to hold on, and Gu Xiaoyang would collapse on his own. Gu Xiaoyang clearly understood this point. He knew that Yi Guqin wanted to stall for time. Dream on. Even if I die, I'll drag you down to hell with me. Gu Xiaoyang's hair was in a mess. It was as if he was possessed. He did not care about anything else. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to kill Yi Guqin. Vast star return, Emperor star descend. Gu Xiaoyang used his ultimate move again. The 7-star phantom sword in his hand pointed at the sky. A purple meteorite seemed to have come from outer space. It appeared and shot out with Gu Xiaoyang's sword. 8 extremities reincarnation, complete destruction of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin did not hold back. He used his ultimate move and clashed fiercely with Gu Xiaoyang. Boom! It was as if 100 stars had exploded at the same time. The shock waves were so powerful that it was frightening. Both of them coughed up blood and retreated. Yi Guqin's immovable ancient god king armor cracked. It could not withstand more than a few attacks. As for Gu Xiaoyang, it was because of the backlash. After all, he had just received the vast Star Sage King's inheritance. It was too much for him to use it now. Not only was he unable to use much of his power, but it was also a huge burden on his body. If he could deal with Yi Guqin, Gu Xiaoyang would not do such a thing. It was a self-destructive move. Vast star return, heaven-burning star. Gu Xiaoyang used his ultimate move again. His attacks became more urgent. He knew that he could not hold on for much longer. If he could not kill Yi Guqin, his body might collapse first. This move was the ultimate move of vast star return. Gu Xiaoyang used this move. Countless flaming meteors fell from the sky as if they were going to destroy the world. When Yi Guqin saw this, he closed his eyes. He held the sword in his right hand and pointed his left hand between his eyebrows. A strange sword concept spread out. What's going on? Why did Yi Guqin close his eyes? Could it be that he can't resist and is waiting to be killed? Yi Guqin's action attracted the attention of everyone. Yan Wushuang and the others felt as if their hearts had jumped to their throats. However, they did not believe that Yi Guqin would wait to be killed. They knew Yi Guqin's character. He would rather die than submit. He dared to fight with his life when facing Di Haoyan, let alone Gu Xiaoyang. When the sword is here, the person is here. When the person is here, the heart is here. I am the sword, and the sword is me. I become the firmament, and heaven and earth become the sacred sword. This is the unity of man and sword. Yi Guchen muttered. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. In an instant, it was as if the shadow of a sword overlapped with Yi Guchen's body. At this moment, Yi Guchen seemed to have turned into an unyielding sword that could break the heavens. That's the second level of the sword realm, the unity of man and sword. The Sky Prides were shocked and their eyes bulged. It turned out that Yi Guchen had entered the realm of one with the sword. Asura's tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. Yi Guchen used the Asura sword Dao to activate the Thousand Deities tribulation sword technique. In addition, he had the seamless divine abode's tenfold true chi boost. The power of this sword move was unparalleled. A pair of blood-red sword wings spread out from Yi Guchen's back. As the wings flapped, Yi Guchen's body shot out. The blood-red sword light shook the heavens and earth. Boom! A huge collision occurred, and the shock waves overturned the firmament for thousands of miles. Yi Guchen bled again, and the immovable ancient god king armor on his body shattered. However, his expression didn't change as he charged toward Gu Xiaoyang. When Gu Xiaoyang saw that he still couldn't kill Yi Guchen, a crazy look of determination flashed across his eyes. Yi Guchen, you forced me to do this. Vast star domain. Gu Xiaoyang roared to the sky. The blood vessels in his body almost exploded at the same time. It was like a sacrifice. Then, an ancient starry sky seemed to break through the void and press down on Yi Guchen. Could that be a sacred king domain? Everyone roared, and their hearts shook violently. How powerful was a saint king's domain? Once he made a move, it was enough to confine, suppress, and obliterate the void. It's over. Yi Guchen will definitely die this time. Gu Xiaoyang risked his life to bring out the sacred king domain. Even if he only revealed a corner, it was enough to easily kill any divine-dwelling Sky Prides. There was no suspense. Everyone thought that Yi Guchen would definitely die under this move. Chapter 1310. Saint Kings combined their spiritual dwellings and soul palaces, then merged with their own techniques to form a realm. This kind of realm was a kind of realm power. Different Saint Kings would evolve different realms. For example, the Asura Saint King's realm was a river of blood that could refine, suppress, and devour everything. It was extremely powerful. The vast star Saint King's vast star realm was equally powerful. With Gu Xiaoyang's current realm and state, it was naturally impossible for him to fully exert the power of the vast star realm. However, even if he had only refined a corner, it was extremely terrifying and could be considered an absolute killer move. At this moment, that corner of the ancient star was pressing down on Yi Guchen. It was like a five-fingered mountain that suppressed everything. This was an extremely powerful technique. Not to mention the ordinary geniuses, their hair stood on end and their eyelids twitched. Even Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, Jun Xiaoyao, and other geniuses were a little frightened. This move gave them a feeling of death. It's over. Outside the sacred imperial realm, the seventh star lord murmured. Gu Xiaoyang had already fought to this extent. The outcome was already decided. In the end, Gu Xiaoyang might be severely injured and pay a huge price. However, Yi Guchen would definitely die. At this moment, everyone inside and outside the sacred imperial realm was silent. There was no noise or commotion. Everyone held their breath and didn't dare to breathe. They wanted to quietly witness the outcome of this ultimate battle between geniuses. Yi Guchen, die. Gu Xiaoyang's body was like cracked porcelain. He used all his strength to activate a corner of the vast star realm, wanting to kill Yi Guchen directly. In the face of the ancient star that was pressing down, Yi Guchen's expression was solemn, but there was no trace of fear on his face. It's indeed over, but you're the one who's finished. Yi Guchen held his sword with both hands. The Anisrava Divine Palace's tenfold spiritual chi was activated to the extreme. Man and sword as one was enhanced to the extreme. The ancient god's body also erupted with extreme power. For moves of 10,000 god tribulation, heaven's end. Yi Guchen held his sword with both hands and pointed it at the sky. An extremely terrifying storm of sword chi traversed between heaven and earth. The surrounding void imprints were destroyed. It was as if the heavens were shaking, stars were falling, and worlds were being destroyed one after another. The scene was extremely shocking. This was the fourth style of the myriad god tribulation, Heaven's End. Yi Guqin had already comprehended the fourth move, but he had never used it before. This was the first time he had used all Heaven's End. Its power was unparalleled. Even Yi Guqin's leakless divine palace, which could provide a vast amount of true qi, was now showing signs of exhaustion. This meant that the amount of true qi consumed by this move was astonishing. As for its power, it was incomparable to the first three moves. With a slash of the sword energy was destroyed. It was as if it could destroy the heavens and shatter the universe. The true essence of Heaven's End was the destruction of the heavens and the extinction of all living beings. Boom! This sword move stunned time and space, and all the geniuses were speechless. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. The power of this sword was indescribable. Boom! The sword light blasted into the corner of the ancient universe, bursting out waves of destruction. Endless dazzling light spread out, and the rumbling sound never stopped. Even though their eyes were filled with tears from the light, no one looked away. That was because they wanted to witness this moment too much. Rumble! The sound of a huge star shattering rang out, and that corner of the vast star realm was directly shattered. This was not because vast Star Sage King's realm was not strong, but because Gu Xiaoyang could not use the realm's power. Coupled with Yi Guqin's sword move, it was indeed powerful beyond compare. Under such circumstances, the realm was finally broken. Defeated, Gu Xiaoyang is completely defeated. After seeing this scene, all the geniuses instantly understood in their hearts. Gu Xiaoyang had lost any chance of turning defeat into victory. He had even activated his realm, but it was still broken by Yi Guqin's trump card. He had lost any chance. How? Impossible. Gu Xiaoyang's hair was disheveled, and his body was covered in blood. However, the pain in his body was far less than the anger and humiliation in his heart. He had lost. Even though he had used all his trump cards, even though he had gone all out, he had still lost. He had lost at the hands of an ant in his eyes. But I don't believe it. Gu Xiaoyang roared into the sky, his heart filled with endless resentment and unwillingness. He was young Master Nebula, one of the top 10 young masters, and the seed of the Starry Sword Pavilion. He was a 7th grade genius, the darling of the heavens. His cultivation, background, talent, and strength were all 1 in a million. How could he lose? How could he lose? At this moment, Yi Guqin's face was pale. It was obvious that he had overexerted himself, and his body was also severely injured. However, his situation was obviously much better than Gu Xiaoyang's. Gu Xiaoyang, it's over. Yi Guqin murmured. No, but I can still make a comeback. Gu Xiaoyang clenched his teeth. A person's death was like an extinguished lamp. He did not want to die, he wanted revenge. Gu Xiaoyang turned around, wanting to escape from the golden arena. However, Yi Guqin's face was indifferent. Since the battle had already reached this point, it was time to put an end to it. The grudge between you and me started with the sword embryo, and it should also end with the sword embryo. Yi Guqin summoned the Khanate sword embryo in his body. A dazzling light burst out from his dantian. It was a palm-sized sword embryo, like a beautiful jade, surrounded by chaotic aura. At the same time, it was enshrouded in an inextinguishable light. That was the power of the indestructible divine embryo. The Khanate sword embryo should now be called the Khanate indestructible sword embryo. Go! Yi Guqin used his fingers as a sword and pointed at Gu Xiaoyang. Gu Xiaoyang turned around, his eyes filled with fear and unwillingness. The Khanate sword embryo, which he had once seized and enjoyed all the glory, had now become a fatal weapon. Gu Xiaoyang frantically activated his stellar eyes, forming a starry sky barrier to block the Khanate sword embryo. However, the Khanate sword embryo had the power to destroy everything. It directly broke through the starry sky barrier and rushed toward Gu Xiaoyang. Splat! The Khanate sword embryo pierced Gu Xiaoyang's heart without any suspense. As the chaotic aura vibrated, even his internal organs were shaken into minced meat. Gu Xiaoyang was dead. I hate when I seized the Khanate sword embryo. I should have killed you. Gu Xiaoyang's body stopped in the void, as if he was frozen. His eyes bulged and his body trembled violently as he stammered out these words. Unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret in this world. Yi Guchen's expression was indifferent. In fact, Gu Xiaoyang did kill Yi Guchen back then. However, what followed was an even more terrifying soul. Sword demon, Dugubai. If Dugubai's soul had not transmigrated, Gu Xiaoyang would not have been in such a miserable state. As the saying goes, everything is determined by the past. Where there is a cause, there is an effect. The grudge between you and me ends here. Yi Guchen exhaled lightly. He felt refreshed and his sea of consciousness was clear. It was as if a strand of obsession in his soul had dissipated. That was originally Yi Guchen's obsession. Plop. Gu Xiaoyang's body fell from the sky and heavily smashed into the arena, his vitality extinguished. At the same time, a ray of light suddenly rose from the back of his hand and merged into the back of Yi Guchen's hand. What is this? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. Chapter 13:11. On the back of his hand, the golden insignia of the 9th generation sword sect was shining brightly. A golden star could be vaguely seen in the sword-shaped insignia. Could it be? Only then did Yi Guchen remember that Gu Xiaoyang was also a 9th generation sword sect cultivator. Back then, the consciousness clone of the 8th generation sword sect cultivator, Yi Tianqing, had told him. The prodigies who obtained the 9th generation sword sect cultivator's insignia would automatically join the sword sect sequence battle. There were only two ways to seize the insignia of other cultivators. One was to kill them directly, and the other was to make the other party willingly submit and give up their insignia. For example, Jian Jinghong was also a 9th generation sword sect cultivator. Yi Guchen naturally couldn't kill Jian Jinghong to seize his insignia. As for Gu Xiaoyang, Yi Guchen didn't have any scruples and directly killed him. It should be that every time you get a sequence insignia, a star will appear. Yi Guchen finally understood. In this way, the more golden stars one obtained, the more likely it was for one to become a true 9th generation sword sect cultivator. I have a hunch that the 9th generation sword sect sequence battle shouldn't be too far away and… Yi Guchen paused. Di Haoyan is also a 9th generation sword sect cultivator. Killing intent surged in Yi Guchen's eyes. Killing Gu Xiaoyang could be considered to have solved a long-standing problem for Yi Guchen and ended a karma. But this was not the end. The person Yi Guchen really wanted to take revenge and kill was Di Haoyan. He was an existence that countless prodigies of the Nantian region looked up to and was known as an insurmountable mountain. Even the top prodigies, Chu Xuanzhen, looked up to him incomparably. Haotian True Dragon, Di Haoyan. In contrast, although Gu Xiaoyang was also powerful and was also a top prodigy, he was still far from Di Haoyan. When they were in the Tianhuang Plains, Di Haotian's cultivation had reached the 7th level of the Divine Palace, and at that time, Gu Xiaoyang was only at the 3rd level of the Divine Palace. Now that so much time had passed, how strong would Di Haoyan be? 9th level of the Divine Palace, or Celestial Palace Supremacy? Not to mention, Di Haoyan had 3 innate divine powers and was rumored to have the bloodline of the 100 races in the universe. The difficulty of killing Di Haoyan was far greater than killing Gu Xiaoyang. Back then, Yi Guchen had been able to severely injure Di Haoyan largely because he had taken the 9 deaths no regrets pill, which was equivalent to sacrificing one of his own lives. And now, Yi Guchen did not have any extra lives to sacrifice. Therefore, he had to use his true strength to defeat Di Haoyan. Although I've used many trump cards to kill Gu Xiaoyang, I've still kept a trump card hidden. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered. His 3 sword domains had fused into his ultimate sword domain. His sky-devouring secret technique. Even his signature Dugu's 9 swords had not been used yet. These were the gifts Yi Guchen had prepared for Di Haoyan. Apart from this, Yi Guqin's greatest trump card was Dugu's seeking demons. Right now, Yi Guqin's identity was completely exposed. However, Dugu's identity was still not exposed. No one knew that Dugu's seeking demons was his doppelganger. In this way, Di Haotian naturally could not be on guard. When the time came to battle with Di Haotian, Dugu's seeking demons would definitely bring a big surprise to Di Haotian and everyone. Di Haotian, you will definitely appear on Sky Burial Island. At that time, Gu Xiaoyang will be your precedent. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold. He could not wait to fight with Di Haotian on Sky Burial Island. Bury Sky Burial Island, bury Di Haotian. Just as Yi Guqin's mind was spinning with thoughts, the atmosphere in the entire sacred land of inheritance was dead silent. Dead? Is Gu Xiaoyang really dead? Some geniuses had not even recovered from their shock. Gu Xiaoyang, the famous genius of the Nantian region and one of the top 10 young masters, had died just like that? After a full 15 minutes, the crowd finally recovered from their shock. Countless exclamations and exclamations spread in all directions. Yi Guqin had really killed Gu Xiaoyang. His revenge was a success. Who would have thought that the guy Gu Xiaoyang regarded as an ant would kill him instead? Yi Guqin can be said to be the role model of all geniuses in our dynasty. He rose from a low-level dynasty and reached this step, standing at the peak of the sacred imperial world. Who else can do that? Don't be so optimistic. The 3 days haven't passed yet. Moreover, he killed Gu Xiaoyang. Do you think the Starry Sword Pavilion will let him go so easily? Not only Gu Xiaoyang, but the 4 Star Lords also died in his hands. It seems that Song Yuyao, one of the 7 Great Bears, also died in his hands. And Zhou Heng's death seems to be indirectly related to Yi Guqin. So, the 7 Great Bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion all died because of Yi Guqin, right? When everyone thought of this, they all took a deep breath. That was a huge grudge. The 7 Great Bears were the 7 core geniuses of the Starry Sword Pavilion, but they had all died because of Yi Guqin. If it were any other force, they would not be able to accept it. At the moment, the atmosphere outside the sacred imperial world was so solemn that it was terrifying. Many forces turned their attention to the Starry Sword Pavilion. The 7th Star Lord's face was as cold as ice. A surge of horrifying killing intent almost changed the color of the sky and earth. The 4 Star Lords were dead. So was Gu Xiaoyang. The 7th Star Lord couldn't help but want to rush into the sacred imperial world and tear Yi Guqin apart with his own hands. But the last bit of sanity he had left told him that it was impossible. Star-Lord, we can't just let it go. An elder of the Starry Sword Pavilion next to him also looked angry. The Starry Sword Pavilion had lost too much this time. It was immeasurable. The 7 Great Bears had all been killed by Yi Guqin. There were almost no young disciples left. The 7th Star Lord tried to suppress his anger and said coldly, "This is not over." He wouldn't let go of Yi Guqin. Even if he wanted to, the other Star Lords of the Starry Sword Pavilion wouldn't let him go. Those Star Lords were even more powerful than the 7th Star Lord. The 7th Star Lord shook his head and mumbled to himself, "The 7 sons of the Big Dipper are all dead." It seems that it won't be long before the 7 sons of the Big Dipper and the Crepe Myrtle Star Maiden are born. They were supposed to compete with Di Haotian and the others. Everyone thought that the 7 Great Bears were the strongest of the younger generation of the Starry Sword Pavilion. They didn't know that the Starry Sword Pavilion had other hidden geniuses. The 7 Great Bears were supposed to be nourishment and resources for the son of 7 stars when they grew up. However, the nourishment had been killed by Yi Guqin. It wasn't hard to imagine that the son of 7 stars wouldn't be nice to Yi Guqin. "Yi Guqin, you can't escape the fate of death no matter what," said the 7th Star Lord coldly. Yi Guqin didn't know the details of the Starry Sword Pavilion, but he wouldn't be scared even if he did. On the Sword Dynasty's side, Confuzi and Wu Hongyan were both very worried about Yi Guqin. Yen Chang'e and the others from the Swallow Cloud Dynasty were also worried. Because Yi Guqin had killed Gu Xiaoyang, it didn't mean that it was over. On the contrary, Yi Guqin's current state was very bad, which would make the other geniuses who wanted to obtain the sacred emperor's heritage even more restless. Chapter 13:12. In the golden arena of the sacred land of inheritance. Yiguchen stood in the air and secretly adjusted his breathing. Drops of ancient god blood flowed out of the sealed ancient god heart in his body to nourish his injured body. Yiguchen also took out some quasi-saint medicine and elixirs to consume. The battle was unusually intense, and Yiguchen had expended a lot of energy to kill Gu Xiaoyang. Although his physical body was strong, he was still injured. Moreover, after using the fourth move of the 10,000 God Tribulation, Yiguchen's divine dwelling vital energy was slightly depleted and needed time to recover. At this moment, many geniuses outside the golden arena were ready to make a move. After all, Yiguchen's condition seemed to have hit rock bottom. This was the best time to take advantage of him. Moreover, the sacred emperor's inheritance was too tempting. No genius could resist such an opportunity. Sorry, although it's not good to take advantage of others, I really want the sacred emperor's inheritance. Which one was the first to make a move? She was a member of the demonic sect and did not care about good or evil. At this moment, she twisted her waist and was about to make a move. Are you looking down on me? Yi Songyue, who was dressed in a white robe, blocked Wan again. Wan frowned slightly and then said with a teasing expression, Wan was wondering why Sister Songyue would help Jin Kuei, who she did not know. Now I understand. The Khanate sword embryo and the immortal divine embryo have telepathy. No wonder they are a perfect match. Don't talk nonsense. Yi Songyue reprimanded coldly, blushing slightly. Tsk, blushing just like that. But sister, don't forget that you and the Demon King already have a love story. Are you going to fall in love with someone else now? Wan deliberately said this to expose Yi Songyue's inner scar. Yi Songyue's face paled slightly, and she gritted her teeth. Her feelings toward Dugu Qiuemo were also very complicated. However, Yi Songyue had the biggest doubt in her heart. Why did her immortal divine embryo condense in Khanate sword embryo when Dugu Qiuemo took her body? Could it be that between these two, Yi Songyue was shocked? She glanced at the white-haired Dugu Qiuemo from the corner of her eyes before looking at Yiguchen. Their temperaments were completely different. They could even be said to be two extremes. One of them was domineering, and his demonic might was overwhelming. One was deep and reserved, like an ancient well without ripples. However, their faces were vaguely similar. Some people noticed it, but they didn't pay much attention to it. Could it be impossible? This is absolutely impossible. An almost impossible thought arose in Yi Songyue's mind, but she quickly rejected it. This kind of thing was too shocking and simply impossible to believe. Taking a step back, even if that was the case. However, Dugu's strength in Qiuemo was there for all to see. If this strength was only a clone, it was simply unimaginable. I must have thought wrong. Yi Songyue cut off this thought. Sister Songyue, are you thinking about how to choose between Dugu Qiuemo and Yiguchen? To think that you're called a fairy when you're actually a scum. Wan continued her psychological attack. Shut up. Yi Songyue's black hair danced and her snow-white robe fluttered. Her sword vibrated and her flawless face was filled with killing intent. Wan had touched her bottom line. On the other side, Gu Zun's eyes flickered. He couldn't wait to fight Yiguchen and settle their grudge. However, given Yiguchen's current state, it would be a dishonorable victory if he fought. Gu Zun might even leave behind an inner demon. Therefore, Gu Zun didn't make a move. This surprised Zhao Shinkong a little. It seems that you're not that kind of person. Zhao Shinkong said indifferently. I just don't want to leave a bad name for taking advantage of others. I want to kill him fair and square. Gu Zun said hoarsely. Gu Zun, if you don't make a move, I will. The sacred emperor's legacy can't be ignored. Dao Wuming smiled faintly. Chen Qingxiao once again stood in front of Dao Wuming. Dugu Qiuemo, you know that Chen Qingxiao alone can't stop me. I might even kill him. Dao Wuming frowned. On the other side, Dugu Qiuemo said indifferently, if I kill him, then so be it. I've never thought of letting Chen Qingxiao walk out of the sacred emperor world alive. Dugu Qiumo's emotionless words sent a chill through the hearts of the surrounding geniuses. Dugu Qiumo was too ruthless. Dugu Qiumo naturally had his reasons for saying that. Even if he brought Chen Qingshao out of the sacred emperor world, given his status as a member of the Imperial Heavensword Pavilion, he would still be forced to hand Chen Qingshao over to them. Rather than that, he might as well let Chen Qingshao release his last bit of light and heat to help Yi Guchen fend off the attacks of the other geniuses. Dugu Qiumo, do you really want to die? Huang Qianqiu's tone was incomparably cold. How dare Huang Qianqiu tell an Imperial Heavensword Pavilion disciple to die in front of him? It was a slap to his face. You can't kill me yet? Dugu Qiumo's tone was indifferent. You're courting death. Huang Qianqiu made a move. He would definitely make a move now. Apart from the Sacred Emperor's legacy, Huang Qianqiu also wanted Yi Guchen's ultimate sword domain. It was also rumored that the primordial demon sword, God Devourer, was with him. Moreover, Huang Qianqiu was also a 9th-generation sword master. If he could kill Yi Guchen with his own hands, he would be able to obtain 2 sequence insignias at once. This was a huge gain for Huang Qianqiu. Therefore, Huang Qianqiu would definitely not let go of this opportunity. On the other side, Chu Xuanzhen's eyes were shining. It's indeed unexpected that he could kill Gu Xiaoyang. However, senior brother Di Haoyan is far more powerful than Gu Xiaoyang. I'd like to see how much strength Yi Guchen has. Chu Xuanzhen couldn't hold back and wanted to make a move. Unsurprisingly, Jun Xiaoyao blocked his way again. Jun Xiaoyao, do you really want to stop me? Chu Xuanzhen's eyes were filled with hostility. Yi Guchen is my friend. I won't sit back and watch him be in danger. Jun Xiaoyao's handsome face was calm and indifferent with a smile. Mind your own business. Chu Xuanzhen made a move. Sword chi surged. Heavenly mandate, unsheathe. Jun Xiaoyao's body shook. The sword pouch on his back opened, and the heavenly mandate sword rose into the air. These two were both of the top 10 young masters. At this moment, the battle was extremely intense. Apart from them, many other geniuses were also tempted. Although most of the geniuses were a little afraid of the strength Yi Guchen had displayed. However, there were still a small number of geniuses who didn't care about their lives and wanted to take the risk. Whoever dares to make a move will have to ask the swordsman of the Sword Dynasty first. Jian Jinghong was the first to step out. After some time of recovery, the injuries of these swordsmen had also recovered a lot. Whoever dares to take advantage of the situation and make a move on my master, Mu Xingzu, will turn him into a ghost under my sword. Mu Xingzu also stepped out. There were also Xuanlian, Jiang Fengnian, Ling Yamoshu, Su Ziheo, Suki Miyazaki, Han Lingxian, Ling Moin, and Kongkong. The 10 swordsmen of the Sword Dynasty stood in a row outside the arena. Their aura was like a rainbow, guarding the injured Yi Guchen like an iron wall. You guys? Yi Guchen's heart was touched. He was the kind of person who was cold and reclusive. It was rare for him to be able to touch Yi Guchen's heart. But now, looking at the backs of the 10 swordsmen, there were also Jun Xiaoyao, Zhao Shenkong Yitang Yue, and the others who were helping him. Yi Guchen felt a little emotional for a moment. However, those geniuses didn't feel this way. They just wanted to take the risk. If they could really get the inheritance of the Saint Emperor, any price would be worth it. Chapter 1313. The Sacred Emperor's inheritance was too tempting. If one could obtain it, even a pig would be able to fly and become a peerless paragon. There were still more than 2 days left before the 3-day deadline. In addition, Yi Guchen had just finished his battle and was injured. His aura had fallen to rock bottom. It was the best time to make a move. Meanwhile, Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, and the other top paragons were also held back by the other paragons. This gave the paragons a free period. Everyone, that's the Sacred Emperor's inheritance. You won't get it again if you miss it. Are you really willing to give up just like that? An illusory voice came from the crowd. It was unknown who it was. It was obvious that the paragon wanted to incite the crowd but did not want to expose his identity lest he was targeted by the sword son of the Sword Dynasty. That's right, This is the only chance to become a dragon. If you miss this opportunity, you'll be at the bottom forever. Another voice sounded again. Hearing this, some of the paragons present were eager to make a move. There were still more than half of the paragons who did not dare to act rashly after seeing Yiguchen's strength. However, there were still a small number of paragons whose eyes were bloodshot and surged with greed. With a great reward, there would definitely be courageous men. Moreover, the sacred emperor's inheritance was more precious than any reward. Everyone, let's attack together. Whoever gets the inheritance in the end will depend on luck. Let's go. Finally, some paragons could not help but make a move. A slight move would affect the whole situation. As if a fuse had been lit, more and more paragons could not help but make a move. In just a short while, more than 100 paragons rushed towards the golden arena with bloodshot eyes and a greedy and crazy light. It was like a swarm of locusts. You're courting death. Jian Jinghong's eyes flickered. Although the 10 sword sons had not fully recovered from their injuries, they had recovered most of their strength after this period of rest. Heavenly Sword Dao. Jian Jinghong made a move. The power of the creation-level Sword Dao surged out and blocked the paragons. The rest of the sword sons, Mu Xingzu, Jiang Fengmian, Ling Yamoshu, and the others all unleashed their auras. Like a steel wall, they blocked the attacks of the group of sky prides. In addition, Zhao Xiaodi bit her pink lips and stepped forward bravely. Logically speaking, she couldn't just stand by and watch. Battle cries, collisions, and explosions rang out incessantly. Over 100 prodigies and 10 sword sons of the Sword Dynasty engaged in an earth-shattering battle. His true chi was vigorous, and his moves were unhindered. Rubble pierced through the air, and heaven and earth shook. This was a chaotic battle. The top geniuses were playing a game. Mid-level prodigies were also fighting each other. It was hard to imagine that Yiguchen was the cause of such a chaotic battle. Outside the Holy Imperial Realm, countless people were exclaiming at the sight. No matter what happens in the Holy Imperial world, Yiguchen's name will shake the entire South Horizon region. Yeah, he's stirring up a storm by himself. If he doesn't die, he'll have an emperor and 4 sovereigns in the future. He seems to have a grudge against Di Haotian. Looks like we'll be able to watch a good show on Sky Burial Island. Gu Xiaoyang can't compare to Di Haotian. Rumor has it that he's already reached the supremacy realm. Really? Is he that terrifying? Sai, we'll know when the time comes. Right now, let's see if Yiguchen can survive. Outside the Holy Imperial Realm, all the forces were discussing animatedly. Some wanted to see Yiguchen's performance in the future. There were also some people who wished that Yiguchen would die in this battle. Some were thinking about how to find the whereabouts of the immemorial demon sword from Yiguchen after the battle at the Holy Imperial Realm. All in all kinds of people had different ideas. In the Holy Emperor's heritage ground, the battle continued. More and more sky prides joined in. No matter how strong Jian Jinghong and the others were, they were still somewhat inferior. At this moment, Zhao Shinkong's eyes flashed. He couldn't help but take action. Because Gu Zun no longer intended to deal with Yiguchen, Zhao Shinkong didn't need to divert his attention to stop him. Ovizu scram. Zhao Shinkong's long hair fluttered in the wind as he thrust his Daluo golden spear forward. The spear light pierced through the bodies of 4 or 5 sky prides. Damn it, Zhao Shinkong also joined in. Many of the sky prides who took action cursed inwardly. Although Zhao Shinkong had lost to Yiguchen, his strength was still comparable to that of an overlord-level sky pride. The addition of Zhao Shinkong immediately lessened the pressure on Jian Jinghong and the others. But that wasn't all. Someone else actually took action. A terrifying beam of saber chi streaked across the sky, instantly turning 7 or 8 sky prides into a bloody pulp. Gu Zun, what's he doing now? That's right. Doesn't he have a grudge against Yiguchen? Is there something wrong with his head? The one who took action was Gu Zun. All the sky pride's expressions were extremely ugly as they cursed Gu Zun inwardly 1,000 times. He can only die by my saber. Who do you think you are? Gu Zun's hair was a mess, his clothes were sloppy, and he emitted a strange smell. But there was no doubt about his strength. Many people couldn't understand Gu Zun's train of thought. But Gu Zun only wanted to take revenge with the saber in his hand in an upright and fair manner. Only then would he be able to completely remove his inner demon. As for Yi Guchen, his strength had skyrocketed after obtaining the Sacred Emperor's inheritance. Gu Zun still didn't care. He had absolute confidence in his own strength. Moreover, digesting the Sacred Emperor's inheritance wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight. Yi Guchen couldn't possibly become a peerless expert all of a sudden. Therefore, Gu Zun was willing to take action for the sake of a fair battle to remove his inner demon. Outsiders naturally didn't know what Gu Zun was thinking, so they all thought he was crazy. However, the addition of Gu Zun and Zhao Shinkong only eased the pressure slightly. As time passed and the deadline of 3 days approached, more and more Sky Prides couldn't suppress their greed and ambition and joined the team. On the last day, there were hundreds of Sky Prides taking action. Even with Zhao Shinkong and Gu Zun intimidating them, they couldn't stop this group of people. In the Golden Arena, Yi Guchen's face was frozen as he watched this scene. He couldn't leave the arena because leaving meant that he had lost the right to receive the inheritance. Therefore, Yi Guchen could only watch as Jian Jinghong, Mu Xingzu and the others were injured because of him. Even with Yi Guchen's cold and reclusive personality, he felt a surge of anger at this moment. His blood seemed to be burning. Finally, Yi Guchen couldn't take it anymore. He took a step forward, his black hair dancing wildly. Words filled with killing intent came out of his mouth. If anyone dares to take action again, I, Yi Guchen, swear that in 3 days, I will make them pay with blood, pay with their lives. The cold and boundless words were like a sudden clap of thunder that resounded in all directions. All the Sky Prides froze at the same time. The chilling killing intent emitted by Yi Guchen was like a sharp sword stabbing into their hearts. Chapter 13-14. Fear. That was the only feeling in the hearts of all the Sky Prides. Yi Guchen was like the god of death. His words sent chills down the spines of all the Sky Prides. There was no need to elaborate on Yi Guchen's strength. Didn't they see how Gu Xiaoyang died in his hands? Among the hundreds of Sky Prides who attacked, apart from Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, and the others, who else was stronger than Gu Xiaoyang? Yi Guchen's words made the hundreds of Sky Prides fearful and stop what they were doing. Everyone outside the Holy Emperor world was astonished by what they had just witnessed. One sentence made the hundreds of Sky Prides not dare to act rashly. Not everyone had such power and influence. This kid has already started to grow. If he doesn't die in the future, his power will probably be comparable to the 1 emperor and 4 sovereigns. Many important figures of the forces thought that Yi Guchen had already started to have the aura of a Sky Pride king. The only thing he lacked was experience. After all, Yi Guchen had risen too recently and couldn't be compared to veteran Sky Prides like Di Haoyan, Chu Xuanzhen, and Huang Qianqiu. However, one could imagine that after the incident in the Sacred Imperial World, Yi Guchen's reputation would definitely skyrocket when the news spread. In the Sacred Imperial World, the Sky Prides who attacked turned pale and struggled. If they didn't attack, they wouldn't have a chance at all. If they attacked, they would suffer from Yi Guchen's bloody revenge 3 days later. They knew Yi Guchen's character and means. Gu Xiaoyang was a lesson. Yi Guchen would definitely do what he said. The opportunity of the Sacred Imperial World is precious, but one's life is still more important. That's right. If you lose your life, how can you inherit the opportunity? Even if you get into the arena, you won't be able to defeat Yi Guchen. I'm afraid you won't even be able to take turns. Many Sky Prides retreated as they were very afraid of Yi Guchen. This scene made Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, and the others' pupils constrict. Has he already grown? Huang Qianqiu's heart was cold. Others were afraid of Yi Guchen, but Sky Prides of their level wouldn't be. Hundreds of geniuses flinched. Even though there were still a few Sky Prides who were unwilling to give up and continue to attack, they were quickly killed by Jian Jinghong and the others. Outside the Golden Arena was a sea of scarlet. Blood covered the ground, and corpses littered the ground. Yi Guchen heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. If something were to happen to the 10 sword sons because of him, he would feel guilty in his heart. However, there were still people who did not give up. Many people turned to look at Huang Qianqiu and Chu Xuanzhen. The battle between geniuses of this level was extremely intense. It was not something that ordinary people could interfere in. It all depends on Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, Dao Wuming, and the others. If they can break through and enter the arena, Yiguchen will be in danger. Everyone was watching, both inside and outside the holy imperial universe. Of course, the most eye-catching person was Huang Qianqiu, because he was the only one of the 4 emperors who had come from the sacred imperial realm. He was almost at the top of the pyramid of geniuses. The strength of the 8th layer of the divine dwelling realm was enough to laugh proudly at the crowd. I didn't expect Dugu Qiuma to be able to last so long in Huang Qianqiu's hands. That's right. I thought he would be defeated very quickly. Everyone's attention shifted to the battle between Huang Qianqiu and Dugu Qiuma. Huang Qianqiu was obviously testing the waters and did not really attack. Dugu Qiuma was the same. However, as time passed, there was only 1 day left before the 3-day deadline. If he did not get serious, he would lose his last chance. Huang Qianqiu's purple hair fluttered, and his purple eyes shone with a cold light. Dugu Qiuma, do you really think you can fight me? I didn't even use much of my strength. Huh, then how do you know that I used all my strength? Dugu Qiuma's lips curled into a cold smile. I'm foolish. Huang Qianqiu snorted, and his strength of the 8th layer of the divine dwelling realm was fully unleashed. He raised his hand, and a huge true qi handprint was formed, pressing down on Dugu Qiuma. It was the great heaven-shattering handprint. 13 demonic swords, blood kill. Dugu Qiuma also activated the leakless divine dwelling in his dantian, and the aura of the 5th layer of the divine dwelling realm exploded. With 10 times the power of his true qi, he was not inferior to Huang Qianqiu, who was at the 8th layer of the divine dwelling realm. He held the God Devourer in his hand, and a blood-red sword ray tore through the air. With a loud bang, the sword ray broke through the giant heaven-shattering handprint, and a powerful shock wave shook the surroundings. Giant Vajra handprint. Huang Qianqiu attacked again, and his true qi seemed to have turned into a golden shadow. The shadow raised its hand, and a giant golden handprint was formed. It was like the hand of a Buddha, and it was indestructible. It pressed down on Dugu Qiuma again. 13 demonic swords, vanishing shadow. Dugu Qiuma's sword momentum condensed. His figure flashed, leaving behind an afterimage. The sword ray was dazzling, and it slammed into the giant Vajra handprint one after another. Huang Qianqiu took the opportunity to attack again. 7 slashes of the desolate heaven, sky-breaking slash. Huang Qianqiu slashed down with the desolate god slash, and the shock wave was so powerful that it made one's heart tremble. 13 demonic swords, burning star. Dugu Qiuma was like a needle against an awl, and he did not retreat at all. He held the God Devourer in his hand, and he used a powerful move to clash with Huang Qianqiu's move. Clang. The ear-piercing sound of metal clashing spread in all directions, and it was as if it wanted to shatter everyone's eardrums. Dugu Qiuma's body shook, and he took a dozen steps back. Huang Qianqiu's blood was boiling in his chest. However, what surprised him even more was that the desolate god slash in his hand was actually buzzing and trembling. It was as if it was emitting a feeling of fear. To sword. Huang Qianqiu's gaze fell on the sword in Dugu Qiuma's hand. The God Devourer was wrapped in black crystals. Even a sage would not be able to sense a trace of the primordial demon sword's energy if they did not check carefully, let alone an ordinary person. Huang Qianqiu could not see through it, but he could feel that the weapon in Dugu Qiuma's hand was extraordinary. It's indeed something, but it's still useless. Huang Qianqiu was not too bothered. Although divine weapons were a part of one's strength, one's own strength was still the most important. He took a step forward. Every step he took was as if he was stepping on a drum, and it caused the void to tremble. It was Huang Qianqiu's ultimate movement skill, the 9-step Divine King Stomp. Moreover, it was not just a simple movement skill, as it was also extremely powerful. He stomped down on Duguchioma as if he wanted to stomp him to death. "You're courting death." Duguchioma raised his eyebrows. He was also arrogant and domineering, so how could he endure Huang Qianqiu's humiliation? Burning star, cutting moon, eclipse sun. Duguchioma used 3 moves of the 13 demonic swords consecutively. The 3 moves were connected, and the energy waves were extremely powerful. 7 slashes of desolate heaven, sky-piercing slash. Huang Qianqiu slashed down with his sword again, and the mighty sword radiance seemed to pierce through heaven and earth. The collision of the moves caused a huge wave. At the same time, Huang Qianqiu raised his hand without any hesitation, and the golden sequence insignia on the back of his hand shone brightly. "I'll defeat you with 1 move." Sword Sect's ultimate move, Boundless Divine Sword. Huang Qianqiu's move was like the wrath of an emperor, and his sword suppressed the mountains, rivers, sun, and moon. What a powerful move. Can Duguchioma block it? Seeing this, the crowd was frightened. They knew that Huang Qianqiu was really angry, and he was starting to get serious and use his ultimate move. "Just nice. I'll use you as a whetstone to test the power of my self-created sword skill." Duguchioma laughed coldly, and his white hair fluttered. In an instant, a terrifying and piercingly cold aura that was filled with killing intent spread out. Duguchioma was going to use his self-created sword skill. Chapter 13:15. At this moment, Duguchioma's aura was rising steadily. His snow-white hair fluttered wildly in the wind, further accentuating Duguchioma's wild demonic nature. He held the sword with both hands, activating the flawless Azura divine dwelling to the extreme. Blood-red Azura chi gushed out and poured into the God Devourer sword. Path of Calamity Demon, Demonic Edge Annihilation Martial. Duguchioma raised his sword. A pitch-black sword shadow seemed to spread out along with his sword, spreading across the world. An incomparably terrifying storm of sword chi spread out, bringing with it an extremely cold and murderous aura. What a terrifying aura! What sword move is that? It's almost 100% compatible with Duguchioma's aura. Could it be a sword move that he created himself? Some of the heaven prides with slightly better eyesight couldn't help but exclaim. When he used his self-created sword technique, the feeling was different from using other martial arts. There was a natural sense of compatibility. Because it was self-created, no one understood this move better than Duguchioma. How terrifying! Duguchioma can create his own sword move. Many heaven prides trembled in fear. Creating one's own sword technique was not something that anyone could do. Even if they could do it, the power of the self-created sword move wouldn't be that strong. But now, seeing Duguchioma's ultimate move, the powerful ripples caused one's heart to palpitate. Path of Calamity Demon. This was the sword move that Duguchioma had himself, and it didn't only have one move. Duguchioma's sword edge vibrated, and the pitch-black sword shadow also burst out at the same time, colliding with Huang Qianqiu's ultimate sword move. Rumble. Like a magnitude 18 earthquake, the ground shook as if on the verge of collapsing. The collision was extremely shocking, and the aftershocks alone were enough to injure a group of divine-dwelling heaven prides. Puchi. And in this collision, both Duguchioma and Huang Qianqiu were injured. Blood flowed from the corner of Duguchioma's mouth, but his expression didn't change in the slightest. Huang Qianqiu took a few steps back, and the disdain in his eyes changed to surprise and seriousness. A self-created sword move? Huang Qianqiu's brows knitted together. Duguchioma's sword move made his heart palpitate. More importantly, Duguchioma's sword move didn't have any defense at all, and it was completely on the path of attack. Path of Calamity Demon, 100 Ghosts Parade. Duguchioma activated his divine abode again, and blood-red true chi surged out. Countless figures of demons and monsters seemed to have appeared in his surroundings, and they roared miserably and miserably, causing the heavens and the earth to transform into a dangerous realm of ghosts. Duguchioma charged forward without any defense. He attacked with all his might, and the surrounding phantoms also charged forward. The move's demonic edge annihilation was. What a powerful move. Dugu Chiuma's move is terrifying. Did you guys notice that Dugu Chiuma's self-created sword moves are all about attacking and killing? He doesn't hold back at all. Many Sky Prides could tell that Dugu Chiuma's sword move was terrifyingly powerful. Yiguchen was also watching the battle from the Golden Arena. Interesting. Path of Calamity Demon is indeed very compatible with Dugu Chiuma's fighting style, Yiguchen muttered to himself. Chiuma's sword move didn't hold back at all. It gave up some defense in exchange for 200% of its killing power. Dugu Chiuma was indeed a lunatic. However, considering that he had the talent of the Soul Devourer clan, it was understandable that he had such a crazy personality. As for Yiguchen, his two self-created sword moves, Emotions of Heaven and Vast Ocean of Sorcerer Mountains, were based on emotions. Strictly speaking, it was Yiguchen's obsession. It couldn't be considered an orthodox self-created sword move. Dugu's 9 swords was the essence of his self-created unique skill. Chiuma, I hope you can surprise me again. Yiguchen smiled faintly. Creating this doppelganger was the wisest decision he had made. Dugu Chiuma could at least contend with Huang Qianqiu. When the time came, he would be a huge threat to Di Haotian. On the other side, in the battle, Dugu Chiuma attacked recklessly. His 100 Ghosts parade was extremely powerful. As his sword vibrated, it was as if ghosts were running amok and souls were crying. 7 slashes of desolate heaven-shaking slash. Huang Qianqiu raised his sword again. With the desolate god slash in his hand, he slashed down. Sword chi surged and the surrounding void vibrated, creating a destructive sword wave. Rumble. As the sword chi collided, the sound of friction could be heard incessantly. Dugu Chiuma's figure was once again pushed back. Although he was injured, the heart in his body was the heart of the Azura Saint King. Therefore, these injuries were nothing to him. Damn it. Huang Qianqiu's face darkened. It wasn't that he was afraid of Dugu begging the devil, he just felt that it would be very troublesome. Furthermore, some of his trump cards were meant to be used against Di Haotian and the other sovereigns. If he were to use them now, it would be disadvantageous to him. The difficulty of Dugu Chiumo far exceeded his expectations. It seems like Huang Qianqiu won't be able to do anything to Dugu Chiuma for the time being. I didn't expect that Yiguchen and Dugu Chiuma would emerge at the same time from the Holy Emperor universe. Many talents were discussing. There was no doubt about Yiguchen's performance. He was the most dazzling existence in the Holy Imperial universe. On the other hand, Dugu Chiuma's performance was not weak either. Now, he was even able to fight against Huang Qianqiu, one of the 4 sovereigns. His performance was second only to Yiguchen. Some people even thought that if Dugu Chiuma used his full strength, he might not be weaker than Yiguchen. As time passed, the entire Holy Imperial universe suddenly shook. Then, a bright light shone and golden clouds filled the sky. A resplendent light pillar pierced through the sky and landed on the golden arena. Shit. Damn it, Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, and the others looked terrible. A mighty voice reverberated in the void. 3 days have passed. The one standing on the arena will receive my inheritance. Yiguchen felt as if he was bathing in the warm sunlight. Then, Yiguchen's body floated up and disappeared in the golden light. Where's Yiguchen? Why is he missing? He must have gone to receive the sacred emperor's inheritance. Seeing Yiguchen's figure disappear from the golden arena, many geniuses discussed. Damn it. Boom. Huang Qianqiu swung his sword casually and plowed a 100-foot-long crack in the ground. His eyes were incomparably cold as he stared at Dugu Chiuma and said, "This matter is not over yet." Huang Qianqiu wanted to use his true strength to kill Dugu Chiuma. However, the price he had to pay would not be small and he would expose his trump card. He valued the battle at Sky Burial Island very much and even wanted to surpass Di Haotian. Therefore, he could only hold back for now. Chu Xuanzhen, Dao Wuming Wan, and the others also looked terrible. The sacred emperor's inheritance had slipped away under their noses. As for those who were on Yiguchen's side, they only wished him well. They were also very curious about how strong Yiguchen, who was already very strong, would become after receiving the inheritance of the Holy Emperor. Chapter 13:16. Everyone was discussing Yi Guqin's disappearance, both inside and outside the sacred imperial realm. Yi Guqin himself had arrived at a strange place. This was a paradise that resembled a paradise. Spirit qi was steaming, and white mist was dense. There was a grass hut in front of a pond. A scholarly man in a straw raincoat was fishing quietly by the pond. Yi Guqin had a strange look in his eyes. He knew that he had passed the test and could receive the sacred emperor's inheritance. However, this was a little different from what he had imagined when he inherited the sage emperor's legacy. He slowly walked into the pond. The scholarly man in the straw raincoat was holding a fishing rod and casting it forward. In an instant, Yi Guqin's heart skipped a beat. In a trance, Yi Guqin seemed to see a peerless powerhouse slashing out with his sword. Tens of thousands of sword shadows converged together, fusing into a heaven-piercing sword that traversed the heavens for tens of thousands of miles, stirring up millions of winds and clouds. This technique. Yi Guqin took a deep breath. That was not all. The scholarly man in the straw raincoat cast the fishing rod a second time. The scene before Yi Guqin seemed to have changed again. A huge pure qi sword seemed to have descended from the heavens. It was like the judgment of a god. Then, the scholarly man cast the fishing rod a third time. The scene before Yi Guqin changed again. It was as if all the swords in the world were gathering toward the supreme expert. Then, all the swords attacked at the same time, breaking the divine shield. After casting the fishing rod 3 times, the scholarly man finally stopped moving. Yi Guqin came to his senses. There was still some shock in his eyes. He walked up to the scholarly man and cupped his fists slightly. "Thank you, senior." "What are you thanking me for?" The scholarly man turned his head, and his deep eyes seemed to contain 2 small worlds. "Thank you for teaching me, senior," Yi Guqin said. Interesting. As expected of someone who can make a lotus sprout 50 leaves. You didn't disappoint me. If you can't even comprehend these 3 moves, even if you can reach this stage, I won't let you obtain the inheritance. The scholarly man smiled faintly. As expected, Yi Guqin thought to himself. It was not easy to obtain the sacred emperor's inheritance. In the end, he had to get the approval of the master of the sacred imperial world. The 3 moves I used just now were a saint-level sword art, the 10,000 sword divine technique. There are 3 moves in total. First move, myriad truths annihilation. Second style, myriad attraction heavenly tree. The third style, myriad swords greeting the ancestor. This is the first inheritance I'm going to give you. Yi Guqin was shocked to hear this. The various martial arts levels were divided into acquired, innate, spirit, king, and emperor levels. Above the emperor-level sword arts were the saint-level sword arts. This was something even more powerful than an emperor-level sword art. However, saint-level martial arts were too rare. Even in the overlord-level forces, they were the absolute core. It was impossible to have many of them. Moreover, saint-level sword arts were much more difficult to cultivate than emperor-level sword arts. If one wasn't a true genius, it would be difficult to cultivate saint-level sword arts. Even if one forced themselves to cultivate it, it was difficult to comprehend the essence of it. However, Yi Guqin belonged to the category of people with monstrous talent. Therefore, he was able to quickly comprehend the 3 sword moves. Moreover, Yi Guqin noticed that this was only the first inheritance. "Next, I'll give you the second opportunity." The scholarly man spoke faintly and waved his hand casually. Instantly, countless golden drops fell like rain and merged into Yi Guqin's body. Yi Guqin immediately felt countless pure spiritual qi surging into his divine dwellings. His cultivation base also began to loosen. "It's up to you how much you can break through after the spiritual qi empowerment this time," the scholarly man said. Rumble. Thunder rumbled in Yi Guqin's divine dwellings. His cultivation base began to rise and rose directly to the 5th layer of the divine dwelling. Then it continued to rise and broke through to the 6th layer of the divine dwelling. In the divine dwelling stage, Every breakthrough required a huge amount of resources and spiritual chi. During this period, Yiguchen broke through 2 layers in succession and reached the 6th layer of the divine dwelling. This was unimaginable for the heaven prides of the outside world. Not only that, the pure spiritual chi continued to pour into Yiguchen's body. But this time, Yiguchen began to suppress it, unwilling to let himself continue to break through. This was because he wanted to transform his divine dwelling into a world-level divine dwelling. He still needed to pass through the remaining 2 tribulations so that he could break through in the most perfect state. Therefore, before this, Yiguchen did not intend to break through to the Heavenly Palace Venerable stage. But this did not prevent him from receiving the spiritual chi empowerment. Yiguchen compressed the spiritual chi energy and stored it in his body. When he needed to break through to the Heavenly Palace Venerable stage, the spiritual chi energy would erupt again and help him break through to the Venerable stage. TSK, what an ambitious little guy. What the surprise. The scholarly man smiled. He did not expect Yiguchen to make such a choice. If it were other heaven prides, they would definitely not be able to resist this temptation and desperately want to break through. It was impossible for them to be as rational as Yiguchen. In the end, the spiritual chi empowerment ended, and Yiguchen's cultivation base stopped at the 6th layer of the divine dwelling stage. However, there was an extremely vigorous energy stored within his body. This spiritual chi energy would be of great help to him when he was preparing to break through to the venerable stage. Thank you, Elder. Yiguchen sincerely thanked him. The scholarly man smiled. Don't be in a hurry to thank me, the inheritance is not over yet. Is there more? Even with Yiguchen's calm temperament, it was inevitable that he would be overjoyed at this moment. He finally understood why all the geniuses were so eager to obtain the succession of the sacred emperor. The spiritual chi empowerment and the saint-level sword art. Any one of them could make a group of heaven prides go crazy. However, these 2 opportunities were actually not all of them. Look at the pond, the scholarly man suddenly said. Yiguchen shifted his gaze to the pond and saw that there were 5 lotus flowers floating above the pond. These 5 lotus flowers were translucent, as clear as crystals, and they reflected 7-colored radiance. They were obviously not ordinary lotus flowers. Even though Yiguchen was experienced and knowledgeable, he could not recognize them for a moment. This is a top sacred medicine, the soul-drawing lotus. It is very beneficial for the cultivation of the soul and the primordial spirit. If you break through to the Heavenly Palace Venerable stage in the future, the energy of the soul-drawing lotus can also help you form the soul palace, the scholarly man said. I see. Yiguchen took a deep breath. The value of each of these 5 soul-drawing lotuses was not inferior to the Enlightenment ancient tree. Take it. The scholarly man waved his hand. Yiguchen nodded slightly and stepped forward to pluck the soul-drawing lotuses. He safely plucked all 4 soul-drawing lotuses. However, when he was about to pluck the 5th soul-drawing lotus, he encountered a resistance. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows slightly and exerted force to pull it out. He suddenly found that there was a lotus root growing under the soul-drawing lotus. Yiguchen's eyes narrowed. Chapter 13:17. This lotus root was shaped like a human and similarly had a torso and 4 limbs. It looked just like a human-shaped lotus root. Most importantly, Yiguchen sensed an extremely astonishing life aura on this human-shaped lotus root. He even had an illusion that as long as he took a bite of this human-shaped lotus root, any injury could be directly healed. This lotus root is... Yiguchen had doubts in his heart. Seeing the situation, the scholarly man said with a smile, apart from the 5 soul-guiding lotuses, this divine life lotus root is considered a life-saving item for you. After all, you obtained my inheritance, I can't let you fall at will. Divine life lotus root? Yiguchen was puzzled. Even he had never heard of this name before. The scholarly man explained with a faint smile, this divine life lotus root is rich in life essence and has the effect of curing the dead, healing bones, and even has the ability to reconstruct the physical body. It can barely be considered a half-divine medicine. Reconstruct the physical body, half-divine medicine? Yi Guchen's pupils shook when he heard that. He was really shocked. Above top-grade holy medicines were divine medicines. And half-divine medicines were existences close to divine medicines. However, looking at the entire Nantian region, forget about divine medicines, even half-divine medicines were virtually extinct already. Even among overlord-class factions, one could not find more than a few half-divine medicines. Yi Guchen did not expect that he could actually still obtain such a precious half-divine medicine. However, this divine life lotus root had the heaven-defying medicinal effect of curing the dead, healing bones, and reconstructing the physical body. Being treated as a half-divine medicine was not an exaggeration. Senior, this is too precious. Even Yi Guchen also felt that the things he obtained were not too generous. These things are already useless to me. Leaving them here is merely a waste. The scholarly man did not care at all. Oh right, I haven't called Senior's name yet? Yi Guchen said. Taking so many benefits from him and not even knowing his name was too rude. My name is Thousand Leaves. Thousand Leaves, Saint Emperor said with a faint smile. Many thanks, Senior Thousand Leaves, Yi Guchen said. 5 soul-guiding lotuses and 1 divine life lotus root. That was equivalent to 5 top-grade saintly herbs and 1 demigod herb. Even saints would be envious and want to seize it. The thousand-leaf Saint Emperor glanced at Yi Guchen and said, Little fellow, are you still waiting for the so-called realm inheritance? Yi Guchen was taken aback. Then, he replied, Senior, the opportunity you gave me is already generous enough. I don't have the qualifications to ask for more. What Yi Guchen said was indeed the truth. He was sincere and sincere. He was not just being polite. Although the legacy of a domain was precious, Yi Guchen had already obtained enough. He was not a greedy person. Yes, he could accept that. He didn't, and he wouldn't be dissatisfied because of this. I can tell you that after reaching the Saint Emperor level, there is no such thing as a realm. No domain? Yi Guchen was puzzled. He knew that Saint Kings all had their own bounded domains. For example, the Azura Sage King's Yellow Springs Blood River and the Vast Star Sage King's Vast Star Realm. Why was there no such thing as a Saint Emperor? Or in other words, the bounded domain has already transformed into another kind of existence, the thousand-leaf Saint Emperor said with a smile. Another kind of existence? Yi Guchen was lost in thought for a moment. Then, a flash of inspiration suddenly appeared in his mind. Could it be? The thousand-leaf Saint Emperor's eyes were filled with admiration. He nodded slightly and said, Looks like you've already thought of it. That's right. In fact, all of you have already stepped into my bounded domain. Yi Guchen's mind shook. It was as if lightning had flashed across his mind. The entire Saint Emperor world was actually a transformed bounded domain. I can tell you that Saint Kings merged their soul palaces and divine dwellings to form a bounded domain. As for Saint Emperors, they can turn their own domain into a miniature world. For example, the Saint Emperor's world was transformed from my previous domain, Yi Futian continued. The thousand-leaf Saint Emperor explained. Yi Guchen's mind was instantly enlightened. It was as if a path had been opened before his eyes. His path of cultivation towards the Saint Realm also gradually became clearer. The thousand-leaf Saint Emperor was letting Yi Guchen understand the cultivation method of the Saint Realm in advance. Thank you for answering my questions, Senior. Yi Guchen clasped his hands solemnly. This kind of cultivation experience was too important to him. This was equivalent to letting Yi Guchen understand the direction of cultivation in the future. All right, with your current cultivation, you are still far from being able to refine and control the entire Saint Emperor world. Therefore, I cannot directly pass it on to you. However, I can give you a core of the Saint Emperor world. In the future, when your cultivation level and strength have increased, you can try to come back and take the Saint Emperor world. The thousand-leaf Saint Emperor said and waved one hand. A golden lotus floated into Yi Guchen's hand. Is this the core of the Saint Emperor world? Yi Guchen murmured. Right now, he did not have the ability to control the Saint Emperor world. However, in the future, when Yi Guchen's strength increased, he could use this core to take over the entire Saint Emperor world. The Saint Emperor world is rich in power. If you have the ability in the future, you can even refine the entire Saint Emperor world into a treasure. When the time comes, you can use it as a means of attack to crush a small world. You can imagine its power. The thousand-leaf Saint Emperor said. Yiguchen was speechless when he heard this. These battles between the Divine Palace and Heavenly Palace levels were still using moves. However, Saint Emperor level experts could create a small world with a single hand. These were two different levels of battle. Although the Saint King level domains were strong, they paled in comparison to a small world. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. The only pity was that Yiguchen was still unable to control the Saint Emperor world. Alright, all the inheritance is here. I hope you can go all the way. Don't die halfway. The thousand-leaf Saint Emperor smiled warmly. I will do my best, Yiguchen said. He was not weak to begin with. After receiving the inheritance, he would be able to improve greatly. Among his peers, Yiguchen no longer had to fear anyone. By the way, little fishy is a little arrogant. You may not be able to make him submit wholeheartedly with your current strength, but he will help you out on my account. If you have enough strength in the future, you can make him listen to your orders, the thousand-leaf Saint Emperor suddenly said. Little fishy? Yiguchen was puzzled at first, but then he suddenly came to his senses. The little fishy that the thousand-leaf Saint Emperor spoke of should be the Dark North King Beimiao. A Dark North King with a rare bloodline and incomparably powerful strength was called Little Fishy by the thousand-leaf Saint Emperor. This made Yiguchen a little speechless. However, he also knew that the Dark North King would not listen to him. It was impossible for the Dark North King to listen to him with the strength of the Divine Dwelling stage. However, Yiguchen did not care. It was enough as long as the Dark North King was willing to help him out on account of the thousand-leaf Saint Emperor. At this moment, the thousand-leaf Saint Emperor's gaze fell on the back of Yiguchen's hand. He frowned slightly and said, You are also a 9th-generation sword sect echelon disciple, right? Yiguchen nodded slightly, but at the same time his heart skipped a beat. From the thousand-leaf Saint Emperor's expression, could he have some past with the sword sect? Chapter 13:18. Senior Thousand-Leaf, is there a problem? Yiguchen asked. Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor shook his head lightly and said, Nothing, I just want to warn you about something. What is it? Yiguchen asked. The 8th-generation sword master cannot be trusted, Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor said. The 8th-generation sword master, Yi Tianxing? Yiguchen raised his brows. To be honest, Yiguchen had a pretty good impression of Yi Tianxing. Previously in the Saint Origin dynasty, he had seen the 8th-generation sword master's consciousness clone in the heavenly law sword realm. It was a middle-aged man with an ordinary face that was so ordinary that it seeped into his bones. However, he became the 8th-generation sword master with an ordinary body. Clearly, he had experienced unimaginable hardships and setbacks. In the end, he defeated the other sword master echelon cultivators to truly become the 8th-generation sword master. Moreover, Yi Tianxing's character was also calm and easy to approach. He did not have the arrogance of an expert. He even passed down the 108,000 sword souls to Yiguchen. Therefore, Yiguchen had a pretty good impression of Yi Tianxing. However, Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor said that Yi Tianxing could not be trusted now? What did this mean? Seeing the doubt in Yiguchen's eyes, Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor said indifferently, Why? Could it be that you have seen the 8th-generation sword master? I once received his inheritance in a secret realm, Yiguchen said truthfully. I see. Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor nodded slightly. May I know why Senior said this? Is there a secret behind it? Yiguchen asked. Actually it doesn't matter. I just said it casually. Just keep it in your heart, Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor said. Yiguchen nodded slightly. He knew that Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor would not tell him more. It was useless even if he interrogated. All right, the inheritance is over. You can leave. Remember, don't die easily and let me down, Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor said. Yes, thank you for the inheritance, Senior Thousand-Leaf. Yiguchen cupped his hands slightly. Then, a golden beam of light descended and enveloped Yi Guqin's figure. His entire person disappeared from the spot. The Thousand Leaves Saint Emperor sighed softly and said, "The chaos has begun. Where should the 9 regions go? Tianxing, I hope you don't go to extremes, the changes of the heavenly Tao, the actions of the heavenly Tao. This is the origin of your name, Tianxing. But how can the fate of the heavenly Tao and the 9 regions be decided by you?" The Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor sighed slightly with a deep look in his eyes. It was as if he could see the chaos of the 9 zones in the future. At the same time, in the sacred imperial world, many golden pillars of light descended from the sky and enveloped every single genius. The holy imperial universe is closing. Many sky prides came to their senses. In the next moment, all the geniuses disappeared from the golden pillar of light and were teleported out of the holy imperial world. At the same time, a vast and majestic voice came from the horizon and resounded in everyone's ears. From now on, the holy imperial world will be completely closed. All the bigwigs outside the holy imperial world were shocked to hear this. What does this mean? The holy imperial world will never be able to open again? Why is this happening? It must be Yi Guqin. He must have received the holy emperor's inheritance. That's why the holy imperial world will be closed forever. Some bigwigs guessed right away. Only when Yi Guqin received the holy emperor's inheritance would the holy imperial world be closed forever. Many of the bigwigs' expressions changed at the thought of this. It was rumored that the immemorial demonic sword, God Eater, was in Yi Guqin's hands. Now, the holy emperor's inheritance was in his hands as well. Yi Guqin could be said to be in high demand. Everyone wanted to suppress him and seize his opportunity and inheritance. Damn it! Huang Qianqiu and the others were enraged. They were also teleported out of the holy imperial world. Huang Qianqiu's liver ached at the thought of losing the holy emperor's inheritance. He stared coldly at Dugu Qiuma, who was not far away from him. If Dugu Qiuma hadn't stopped him, he would have received the holy emperor's inheritance. Just as Huang Qianqiu was about to attack Dugu Qiuma, flashed and stood next to Dugu Qiuma. She smiled at Huang Qianqiu and said, "Huang Qianqiu, since the result is out, there's no need for you to fight anymore, is there? You're helping him? Could it be that the demonic sect of devastation wants him?" Huang Qianqiu's expression darkened. The 2 people he wanted to get rid of the most were Yi Guqin and Dugu Qiuma. One only smiled, but she also revealed her attitude. As for the rest of the sky prides, each of them had a look of pity on their faces. After all, who didn't want the holy emperor's inheritance? Even if Yi Guqin can get the holy emperor's inheritance, he won't be able to leave safely today. Chu Xuanzhen's expression was cold. He wasn't the only one who thought so. The other geniuses thought the same. Yi Guqin had a great time killing in the holy imperial world. However, now that the holy imperial world was over, Yi Guqin had to face the overlord forces. Would they be willing to do nothing when their geniuses were all killed? Obviously not. And the Sword Dynasty was not enough to stop Yi Guqin. Just as all the forces were having the same thought, a dazzling beam of light fell from the void again. A figure in a black robe appeared from it. The pillar of light dissipated, and the figure of a handsome young man with black hair and a black robe appeared from within. It was Yi Guqin. "Die, you bastard!" At the moment when Yi Guqin's figure appeared, a big hand condensed by starlight rushed toward him to kill him. It was the 7th Star Lord of the Starry Sword Pavilion. He said that he wanted to kill Yi Guqin, but in fact, he wanted to capture Yi Guqin first and then force him to hand over the immemorial demon sword and the holy emperor's inheritance. 7th Star Lord, you've gone too far. Wu Hongyan from the Sword Dynasty was the first to lose her patience. She had taken the fruit of saintly way before. Although she didn't reach the saint realm the first time, she did reach the saint realm after cultivating. Now, she and Confuzi were both saints of the tribulation. Wu Hongyan waved her hand. Her vigorous genuine qi shook the void and collided with the starlight hand. The void trembled and was about to be destroyed. Sword Dynasty, how dare you interfere? The 7th Star Lord was furious. He walked out of the endless starlight. He was a middle-aged man in a starry robe. His eyes seemed to be filled with endless starlight. The seventh Star Lord finally showed his true face. No matter what, he's still the Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty. Moreover, we're only halfway through the battlefield of prodigies. The battle on Sky Burial Island hasn't started yet. Are you going to break the rules? Confuzi also stepped out. He held his cane and his white beard fluttered. He looked like a sleeping lion that had just woken up. Wu Hongyan and Confuzi both released their saint aura to face the seventh Star Lord. All the people from the various forces were dumbfounded. They didn't expect the Sword Dynasty to stand up for Yi Guqin. After all, although the Sword Dynasty was strong, the Starry Sword Pavilion was even more untouchable. If they weren't careful, they might bring about the destruction of their country. The number of dynasties that were wiped out by Overlord-class forces wasn't small. Chapter 1319. Wu Hongyan and Confuzi stepped forward. Yi Guqin sighed in his heart. He did not choose the wrong dynasty. The sacrifices he made for the Sword Dynasty were worth it. If it were another dynasty, they might not have cared about him. They might even push him to the Overlord-level forces for benefits. Are you serious? The seventh Star Lord's eyes were extremely cold. That one sentence seemed to freeze the heavens and the earth. Everyone felt a biting chill. Provoking Overlord-level forces was not a wise choice. Confuzi and Wu Hongyan frowned, but they did not retreat. Good, very good. It seems that the Sword Dynasty has a half-step Saint King. You don't even care about the Starry Sword Pavilion. The seventh Star Lord was so angry that he laughed. At this time, the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion Saint, the golden-robed elder, also said, Yi Guqin is indeed very murderous. We need to restrain him. Everyone was shocked. They did not expect the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion to get involved. Then, the Heavenly God Sword Sect Saint spoke again. This saint was no ordinary person. Like the seventh Star Lord, he was also a saint who had appeared in the Tianhuang Plains. Sword Saint Donglu asked Donglu. Back then, he and the seventh Star Lord wanted to seize the immemorial demon sword. In the end, it was Yi Guqin who got it. Now that Yi Guqin finally appeared, he would not let go of this opportunity. Many people were puzzled as to how Yi Guqin could survive. But the most important thing now was obviously the immemorial demon sword and the Saint Emperor's inheritance. Nothing else mattered. Seeing the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion and the Heavenly God Sword Sect intervening, Wu Hongyan and Confuzi's expressions were extremely ugly. Just facing the Starry Sword Pavilion alone was enough to make them feel powerless, not to mention the addition of 2 more Overlord-class forces. As for the rest of the factions, such as the Divine Battle Saber Sect, the Demonic Extermination Sect, etc., even though they had yet to express their thoughts, it was obvious that they were planning to target Yi Guqin too. Is this the attitude of an Overlord force? Didn't I say before that I don't care about life and death in the Sacred Emperor world? Now, you want to blame their deaths on me? Yi Guqin's lips curled into a cold smile. This was the rule of the Battle of Prodigies. As long as one participated, it meant that one had no regard for life or death. However, the seventh Star Lord and the others were trying to blame him for the deaths of Gu Xiaoyang and the others. It could even be said that Yi Guqin was murderous. Yi Guqin, you are too crazy. You have been like this since the Tianhuang Plains. If Di Haoyan had not held back, do you really think you could have hurt him? When Dong Lu said indifferently. Hearing this, some people's eyes flickered. Could it be that Di Hao really held back at that time? Yi Guqin sneered when he heard this. Perhaps Di Haoyan did have a trump card. However, at that time, Yi Guqin had used Borrowing Sword from Heaven, which was obviously beyond Di Haoyan's expectations. He had already defended with all his strength, but he had underestimated the power of Borrowing Sword from Heaven, which was why he had been severely injured. Why did Wen Donglu say that Di Haoyan had held back? You can ask Di Haoyan about the truth. Why do you have to lie to protect his face? Yi Guqin said disdainfully. When Donglio's face darkened. Seeing Yi Guqin going head-to-head with a saint, the rest of the people were speechless. Yiguchen was indeed worthy of being the one who had stirred up endless storms. How many young prodigies dared to go head-to-head with a saint from an overlord force like him? What a sharp-tongued brat. In that case, I'll capture you first. The seventh Star Lord, Wen Donglu, and the others couldn't help but want to directly suppress Yiguchen. However, at that moment, a faint laughter suddenly sounded. A tall and mighty man in a gray robe broke through the void and appeared in front of Yiguchen like an iron wall. Everyone, I'm afraid it's not very good to bully a junior like this. Seeing the sudden appearance of the figure, everyone's eyes converged on him. Some of the heavenly tribulation saints frowned as they felt a great pressure from the faint pressure that was being emitted. The newcomer was the leader of the Sword Way Alliance, Proud Divine Prefecture. Proud Divine Prefecture, your cultivation. When Donglu raised his eyebrows. Haha, I just broke through some time ago and just reached the Saint King realm. Proud Divine Prefecture stood with his hands behind his back, his face indifferent. However, this sentence caused many of the important figures of the various forces to gasp in shock. Just reached the Saint King realm. It was easy to say, but the difference between a saint and a Saint King was like heaven and earth. If the Sword Dynasty only had a saint, then at most, it would only be slightly valued by the Overlord forces. However, if there was a Saint King expert, then even the Overlord forces would not dare to underestimate it and would treat it seriously. After all, a saint ruler was a leader even in an Overlord-level force. Proud Divine Prefecture has broken through to the Saint King realm. The Sword Dynasty's strength has increased. I thought the Sword Dynasty would be bullied, but now that Proud Divine Prefecture has broken through to the Saint King realm, I'm afraid it won't be that easy for the Starry Sword Pavilion to suppress the Sword Dynasty. That's not necessarily true. The Sword Dynasty will definitely not dare to fight the Starry Sword Pavilion head-on. It's not like the Starry Sword Pavilion doesn't have a Saint King expert. There were sounds of discussion from all directions. The arrival of Proud Divine Prefecture could be said to be a stabilizing force, which made Confuzi and Wu Hongyan feel relieved. What surprised them even more was that Proud Divine Prefecture had broken through to the Saint King realm. Yiguchen was not too surprised. Proud Divine Prefecture had been a half-step Saint King before, so it was only a matter of time before it broke through to the Saint King realm. Now, the Seventh Star Lord, Wen Donglu, and the others were in a difficult position, because they could not suppress Proud Divine Prefecture. The Seventh Star Lord's expression was uncertain. Proud Divine Prefecture, you have to understand. Do you really want to go against us overlords? We will not let that Yiguchen go. Proud Divine Prefecture's expression did not change. My Sword Dynasty does not want to go against you, but Yiguchen is my Sword Dynasty's Jiankui. Moreover, killing someone in the Saint Emperor realm does not seem to be the responsibility, does it? Proud Divine Prefecture's words made the Seventh Star Lord and the others speechless. Because that was the rule. They just wanted to suppress Yiguchen. At this time, Elder Qing Song of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion stood up and said, I think it is not appropriate to deal with Yiguchen now. He did not do anything wrong. You are just doing this because of old grudges. But an Overlord-level force is actually speaking up for Yiguchen? Some people revealed a strange look. Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a faint smile. He knew that Elder Qing Song would not be indifferent. Yiguchen was not surprised. He had helped Jun Xiaoyao before, so the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion would not be stingy with their kindness. Moreover, the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion and the Starry Sword Pavilion had a grudge against each other. Even if it was just to annoy the Starry Sword Pavilion, they would be happy to do it. However, Yiguchen was taken aback by the support of another force. Chapter 1320. A beautiful woman in a cheongsam from the Misty Sword Pavilion stood out and said, I also think that it's not a good idea to attack Yiguchen now. Wouldn't that break the rules of the Battle of Geniuses? Besides, with Yiguchen's strength, he'll definitely shine in the Battle of Zhangqian Island and become the main force against the Dark World's geniuses. This beautiful woman was a saint from the Misty Sword Pavilion and the leader of the team this time. What's going on? Even the Misty Sword Pavilion wants to protect Yiguchen? It's strange. The Luo Fu Sword Pavilion spoke because Yi Guchen saved Jun Xiaoyao, but the Misty Sword Pavilion doesn't seem to have anything to do with Yi Guchen. Many people were confused. Not to mention them, even Yi Guchen himself was a little surprised. He didn't seem to have much connection with the Misty Sword Pavilion, except Yi Guchen thought for a while and turned his eyes to the beautiful woman in a moon-white dress with a mole at the corner of her eye. Sanyue. As if she felt Yi Guchen's gaze, Yue's eyelashes fluttered and she looked away. The beautiful woman from the Misty Sword Pavilion looked at Yi Songyue and muttered in her heart, "I didn't expect Songyue to send me a voice transmission and ask me to help Yi Guchen out of this predicament. She wouldn't have taken a fancy to this kid, right?" However, the beautiful woman thought that Yi Guchen was indeed very outstanding. But now, he was in the teeth of the storm. It was uncertain whether he could survive in the end. Seeing that the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion and the Misty Sword Pavilion stood out to speak for Yi Guchen, the Seventh Star Master and Wen Donglu were even more gloomy. The proud divine continent was already troublesome enough. Now, these two overlord forces were helping Yi Guchen. It was undoubtedly more difficult for them to attack Yi Guchen. However, at this moment, a giant hand branded with countless starlight runes broke through the space and grabbed at Yi Guchen. This giant hand had an extremely strong aura. It seemed that even a tribulation saint couldn't resist the suppression of this giant hand. What a terrifying aura! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air in the face of this starry giant hand that broke through space and suddenly appeared. It was clear that the master of the starry hand was located far away, and had unleashed such a powerful attack through space. It's the third Star Lord. The seventh Star Lord was shocked. He recognized the person who had attacked. It was the third Star Lord of the Starry Sword Pavilion. A 6th-level Heavenly Tribulation Realm Peak Sage King expert. Oh, the third Star Lord, he's made a move. When Donglu and the saints of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion were surprised. The third Star Lord was an absolute powerhouse at the peak of the Saint Ruler realm. He could look down on the entire South Horizon region. The proud divine continent's expression also turned slightly cold. He also felt the tremendous power contained in the giant hand of stars. The third Astral Lord was at the 6th level of the Heavenly Tribulation realm, a peak Saint King. And now, even if the proud divine continent broke through, it was only at the 4th level of the Heavenly Tribulation realm. In the Heavenly Tribulation realm, the difference between each realm was huge. It was even greater than the difference between the previous realm. Therefore, facing the giant hand of stars, even the proud divine continent was under great pressure. This is the foundation of an overlord-level force. There are stronger experts casually making a move. The Sword Dynasty has no choice but to admit defeat. I didn't expect that even the third Star Lord would make a move. If the Saint Emperor doesn't make a move, who can stop his strength? Even the proud divine continent would have a hard time. Seeing the giant hand of stars pressing down on the proud divine continent and Yi Guchen, the crowd was filled with emotions. What was an overlord-level force? This was an overlord-level force. Wu Hongyan, Ken Fuzi, and the others' hearts were in their mouths. They were extremely nervous. Elder Qing Song and the beautiful woman from the Misty Sword Pavilion saw this and secretly shook their heads and sighed. It wasn't that they didn't want to help, but there was nothing they could do now. At least the big shots behind them hadn't made a move yet. Yi Guchen stared at the giant hand of stars. It was as if a part of the sky was pressing down on him, making him feel suffocated. I swear that in the future, I will destroy the Starry Sword Pavilion with my own hands. Yi Guchen swore in his heart. He didn't want others to bully him in such a domineering way. Just as the giant hand of stars was about to press down on the proud divine continent and Yi Guchen, a lazy and helpless voice sounded faintly. I still have to make a move. As the voice sounded, a blue-robed figure suddenly appeared. It was a man with an incomparably handsome face. His long, dark blue hair fluttered in the wind, sprinkling specks of light. His blue eyes were as deep as the sea, unfathomable. It was the Dark North Monarch, Bei Miao. Bei Miao looked at the incoming giant hand of stars and waved his hand indifferently. Suddenly, It was as if tens of thousands of waves were surging in the void. Endless waves surged in the void and collided with the giant hand of stars, annihilating each other. A faint puzzled voice came from the space broken by the giant hand of stars. Obviously, it was the third Star Lord who was far away. He didn't expect someone to be able to block his attack. Who are you? Are you protecting that bastard? The seventh Star Lord's face was as cold as frost. He also didn't expect someone to be able to block the third Star Lord's attack. However, when he heard the word, bastard, Bei Miao's calm and handsome face suddenly turned cold. Because his true form was a Luo Kuan, strictly speaking, he was also a monster. The word, bastard, was very sensitive to monsters. I hate that word. Bei Miao's tone was cold as he stepped into the void. Ripples appeared in the void. He waved his hand, and a long river of mystic essence heavy water appeared, as if even the sky was about to collapse. That's the mystic essence heavy water. Is he that Luo Kuan? Everyone was stunned when they saw the mystic essence heavy water appear. Some of the big shots immediately remembered the Luo Kuan that had briefly appeared in the realm of weak water. That was the Luo Kuan that had swallowed Yiguchen. Who would have thought that the Luo Kuan could leave the sacred emperor realm? That was beyond everyone's expectation. You're that Luo Kuan. The seventh Star Lord also came to his senses, but it was too late. The mystic essence heavy water was already pressing down. The seventh Star Lord raised his hand, an endless starlight soared, shaking the void and turning into a star seal. Boom! There was a loud noise. The seventh Star Lord spat out blood and retreated more than 300 meters. His clothes were dyed red with blood. Everyone fell silent when they saw that the seventh Star Lord had been injured. Then they all looked at Bei Miao. That Luo Kuan was actually so strong. If it weren't for the fact that killing you would cause some trouble, I wouldn't mind erasing you, Bei Miao said indifferently. The seventh Star Lord's face was gloomy and pale. As the seventh Star Lord, it was the first time he had been humiliated like that in public. It made him feel aggrieved and resentful. He couldn't wait to fight to his heart's content. However, he couldn't defeat Bei Miao, so he could only suppress his anger. Seeing the situation, Wen Donglu and the saints of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion wisely chose to remain silent. They didn't want to embarrass themselves like the seventh Star Lord. Chapter 1321. The Saint Realm experts of some overlord powers looked at Bei Miao with heavy gazes. They all knew that Bei Miao's true form was a Kuan. Although he was now a rank 8 demon emperor, he should be about as strong as a human tribulation saint. But because Bei Miao's true form was a Kuan, a primordial species, he was much stronger than ordinary monsters. So, ordinary tribulation saints couldn't fight against Bei Miao. Even saint rulers wouldn't have an easy time dealing with Bei Miao. Why is this Kuan protecting Yiguchen? That's right. I saw him swallow Yiguchen in one gulp. What's going on? Many people couldn't figure it out. They didn't know that Bei Miao was a pet of Thousand Leaves Saint Emperor. And Yiguchen, as the successor of Thousand Leaves Saint Emperor, should be Bei Miao's master. But with Yiguchen's current strength, Bei Miao obviously wouldn't submit to him and wouldn't take him seriously. But seeing that Yiguchen had received Thousand Leaves Saint Emperor's inheritance, Bei Miao wouldn't be indifferent. Thank you, Senior Bei Miao. Yiguchen cupped his hands at Bei Miao. No matter what Bei Miao's attitude towards him was, at least he was willing to help him get out of his predicament. This was a favor. Hearing Yiguchen's address, Bei Miao's expression calmed down a little. At least Yiguchen knew his place and didn't talk to him as a master. Otherwise, Bei Miao would absolutely flick his sleeves and leave without stopping in the slightest. No need to thank me. At least I have my freedom, Bei Miao said indifferently. When he talked to Yiguchen, he didn't call him king to express his attitude. And there was another reason why he helped. Yiguchen had indirectly given him freedom. Bei Miao could finally leave the Saint Emperor world and obtain his freedom. Hearing the conversation between Bei Miao and Yiguchen, many people present still didn't understand the relationship between the two. However, he also knew that Bei Miao would protect Yiguchen. This is going to be troublesome, When Donglu of the Heavenly God Sword sect and the Saint of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion both frowned. Originally, the proud divine continent was already difficult to deal with. Now, there was another Beimiao. With the current situation, it was impossible to deal with Yiguchen without a saint ruler. Should he give up just like that? To be honest, the 7th Star Lord and the others were absolutely unwilling to give up. The Sage Emperor's inheritance was one thing, but the immemorial demon sword was something no overlord could remain indifferent to. Yiguchen had also thought of this point. His eyes flashed as he nonchalantly said, "I know what you are thinking. You want to know the whereabouts of the immemorial demon sword, the God-devouring sword." Yiguchen's words caused the entire area to fall silent for a moment. Some of the elders from the overlord factions could even hear their breathing quickening. The immemorial demon sword, even if it was on the Earth ranking, was enough to move people's hearts. Seeing the greed and passion in the eyes of the elders around him, Yiguchen's lips curled into a mocking smile. He then said, "Actually, the God-devouring sword is not with me." What? Yiguchen's words stunned everyone, and shock appeared on their faces. Back in the Tianhuang Plains, everyone had seen with their own eyes that Yiguchen had obtained the God-devouring sword. How could he say that the God-devouring sword was not with him now? Indeed, after I was lucky enough to escape from death, the immemorial demonic sword flew away on its own. Think about it, with my cultivation strength at that time, how could I control the God-devouring sword? Yiguchen said. Indeed, Yiguchen's cultivation back then was so weak. How could the God-devouring sword choose him as its master? That's right. The immemorial demon sword has a spirit. It's impossible for it to submit to a weakling. Some people pondered and felt that this was the case. But obviously not everyone thought so. With just one sentence, you think you can make us give up? When Donglu sneered. If they were so easily deceived, they would have lived in vain. Oh, if you don't believe me, if you have any means to detect the immemorial demon sword, you can give it a try. Yiguchen's lips curled into a faint smile. Looking at Yiguchen's confident and calm appearance, many people were puzzled. Could it be that the immemorial demon sword was really not with Yiguchen? The reason why Yiguchen was so confident was naturally because the immemorial demon sword was indeed not with him. Dugu Chioemo had already hidden the God-devouring sword deep in his dantian, blocking all qi. It was impossible for it to be discovered. Let this old man do it. This old man has a jade seal that can sense the ultimate divine weapons in the world. If there is an immemorial demon sword, it will definitely not escape detection. An elder from the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion said as he walked out. He took out a jade-green jade seal, infused it with qi, and then approached Yiguchen. A ray of light was released and landed on Yiguchen's body. Although Yiguchen's 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword was also a 10th Tribulation Divine weapon, it was not enough to cause a reaction from the Jade Seal. At this time, the Thunder Calamity Sword that had been silent for a long time in Yiguchen's dantian hid in the depths of his dantian. The Thunder Calamity Sword had the ability to automatically hide its qi, so it was not afraid of being detected. What kind of existence is this Thunder Calamity Sword that brought me to this world? Yiguchen could not help but think to himself. The 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra and the 1,000 Deities Tribulation Sword were also obtained from the Thunder Calamity Sword. However, he still shook his head secretly. Perhaps he would have to wait until his cultivation level was higher before he could begin to investigate the mystery of this Thunder Calamity Sword. After a final probe, the Jade Seal did not have any reaction. It seems that this boy really does not have the immemorial demon sword on him. The elder shook his head. This caused an uproar in all directions. They did not expect Yiguchen's words to be true. The 7th Star Lord and the others also looked extremely gloomy. That elder was from the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. Obviously, it was impossible for him to be in cahoots with Yiguchen. In this way, Yiguchen's words were indeed the truth. The 7th Star Lord's eyes flashed slightly and he still said unwillingly, "This at most only proves that the God-Devourer sword is not on you, but it does not mean that you don't know where it is." When Donglu also said, "That's right. Even if you don't have the God Devourer sword, you might have hidden it somewhere and deliberately misled people into thinking that you don't have the God Devourer sword. Their words made some sense, and it made many people come back to their senses. Yiguchen also sighed secretly. As expected, no one who could become a heavenly tribulation saint was a fool. It was impossible to fool them so easily. However, Yiguchen did not want to completely disassociate himself. He only wanted to insist that he did not have the God Devourer sword. I've tested what I should have tested and said what I should have said. Don't go too far. Proud Divine Continent frowned slightly. At this point, did the Seventh Star Lord and the others still want to pester him? Chapter 1322. The Seventh Star Lord, Wen Donglu, and the others looked uncertain when they heard that. Although they didn't believe Yiguchen's words, they didn't have any evidence. It would be even more difficult for them to suppress Yiguchen now that he was protected by Proud Divine Land and Beimiao. Most importantly, they didn't have the right to do so. The battlefield of heavenly talents was a place where life and death were determined by fate. It was understandable that Yiguchen had killed Gu Xiaoyang and the others. Just when the situation was in a stalemate, a distant voice came from the void. Old Seven, forget it. Let's talk about it after Sky Burial Island. Don't let others think that the Starry Sword Pavilion is petty. The Seventh Star Lord was unwilling to give up when he heard that voice. The person who spoke was the Third Star Lord who had attacked before. Since the Third Star Lord had spoken, the Seventh Star Lord could only suppress his anger for the time being no matter how unwilling he was. I'll let you live for a while longer. We'll settle everything after Sky Burial Island. The Seventh Star Lord flung his sleeves and said coldly, then turned around and left. Not only did he fail to suppress Yiguchen, but he also lost face in public. It was simply unacceptable for him. Cherish your last moments, Wen Donglu said calmly. They also knew that it was unrealistic to suppress Yiguchen now. However, after Sky Burial Island and the battlefield of heavenly talents was over, they could start to settle the score. Seeing that the big shots of the overlords couldn't do anything to Yiguchen, the people of the other forces were also shocked. Yiguchen has grown so strong that even the overlords can't do anything to him for the time being. You can't say that. If the Starry Sword Pavilion and the other forces really want to take action, they won't be able to deal with Yiguchen. They're only afraid of being criticized. That's right. After all, the rules of the battlefield of heavenly talents can't be broken casually. Most of the discerning people could see that Yiguchen's crisis hadn't been resolved, but it had been delayed for a while. After Sky Burial Island, no one knew how the situation would develop. The Seventh Star Lord, Wen Donglu, and the others temporarily stopped attacking Yiguchen. As for the others like Emperor Qian and Empress Fengye, it was even more impossible for them to take the initiative to offend Yiguchen. No matter what, Yiguchen was safe and sound until the end of the Battle of Prodigies. Yiguchen thought for a moment. He cupped his hands at Elder Qing Song of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion and said, "Thank you for speaking up for me." Elder Qing Song smiled faintly and waved his hand. "Don't thank me. You once saved Xiaoyao in the Holy Imperial World. Consider this as returning the favor." As Elder Qing Song spoke, his gaze towards Yiguchen became increasingly filled with admiration. At such a young age, his cultivation was superb, and his talent was outstanding. However, his personality was still so calm and composed. Even if Mt Tai collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change, and he even dared to face a saint. This kind of talent, this kind of temperament, in the entire South Horizon region, how many people could achieve this? If this child doesn't die prematurely in the future, he will definitely be an existence that can stir up the winds and clouds of the 9 heavens. Moreover, his relationship with Xiaoyao isn't bad. It's not that we can't pull him in, but, Elder Qing Song thought to himself, if the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion really took in Yiguchen, it would probably lead to pressure from the Starry Sword Pavilion, the Divine Sword Sect, and other forces. Although the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion was also an overlord-level force, it would definitely be under great pressure when faced with multiple forces of the same level. Well, I'll first tell the pavilion about this place. As for the decision, I'll leave it to them, Elder Qing Song thought to himself. On the other side, Yiguchen thanked the beautiful woman of the Misty Sword Pavilion again. Don't thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank Tsang Yue, the beautiful woman said with a chuckle. Thank you, Miss Tsang Yue, Yiguchen said. Tsang Yue nodded slightly, but her gaze was still averted. She did not know how she felt about Yiguchen. That strange feeling might have come from the innate sword embryo and the immortal divine embryo's innate compatibility. Seeing that Tsang Yue was unwilling to look at him, Yiguchen felt a little helpless. His relationship with Tsang Yue could not be severed, and it was still messy. If one said that they were related, then they were. If one said that they were not related, then they were not that close. Yiguchen had never cared much about relationships between men and women, so he did not know how to sort out his relationship with Tsang Yue. Yiguchen. Before he could sort out his relationship with Tsang Yue, Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling had already walked over. They heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Yiguchen was safe for the time being. Yiguchen, if Man Lu sees that you're still alive, he'll definitely be very happy. Yan Chang'e also walked over, his eyes filled with emotions. Yiguchen also fell silent when he heard that. Back then, the Heavenly God Sword sect, the Starry Sword Pavilion, and the Dongfang family, the three overlord-level forces had pressured him. It was Feng Manlu who stood out and blocked in front of him with his weak body. However, for some reason, Yiguchen had a vague feeling that Feng Manlu would not die so easily. Feng Manlu was Yiguchen's master, so he would not die so easily. However, Yiguchen did not say it out loud because it was just his intuition. Heroes indeed come from the young. It's all thanks to Jin Kuei that the Swallow Cloud dynasty is able to survive. The Grand Emperor of the Swallow Cloud dynasty, Yan He, walked over happily. Yiguchen also cupped his hands slightly. By the way, Jin Kuei, how is Wushuang? She misses you day and night. Yan He said with a smile. If they could get on Yiguchen's good side, the Swallow Cloud dynasty's position would be even more stable. What are you talking about, Imperial Grandfather? Yan Wushuang blushed. It was hard to imagine that Yan Wushuang, who had always been tough and did not lose to men, would blush so shyly. Yiguchen only smiled faintly and did not say a word. He still had a heavy burden on his shoulders, so there was no way he could put his mind on romance. Alright, everyone. If you don't mind, why don't we go back to the Sword Dynasty for a gathering? Proud Divine Prefecture asked. Of course. How could we not go when the Alliance Master of Proud Divine Prefecture invites us? Yan He nodded and said, I wonder if I can go and ask for a drink? Jun Xiaoyao smiled faintly and said, You're more than welcome. Yiguchen smiled and said, There was no need to say anything more since they were close friends. Yiguchen, the charming young girl in red seemed to want to say something, but hesitated. Embarrassment, shame, and embarrassment could be seen on her face. It was Princess Fengxi. She did not expect that Zhen Kuei of the Sword Dynasty was Yiguchen. She used to be in a high position, so high that she could even flirt with Yiguchen and have him sleep with her. But now, their statuses had undergone an earth-shattering change. Yiguchen had become someone that Princess Fengxi had to look up to. What was even more embarrassing was that she had been forced to participate in the plan to trap Yan Wushuang in the sacred imperial realm. This has nothing to do with you. I just hope that you can let Empress Fengni know that she will stop thinking about the Yenyun dynasty in the future, Yiguchen said faintly. Of course. Princess Fengxi nodded fearfully. The Yenyun dynasty was no longer an existence that Fengni dynasty dared to provoke. That's good. If you don't mind, let's catch up. Yiguchen said faintly. Thank you. Princess Fengxi's eyes were wet. She did not expect that Yiguchen would not mind what she had done. Yan Wushuang did not mind too much. After all, this was Empress Fengni's matter. Princess Fengxi was just stuck in the middle and was in a difficult position. Chapter 1323. They looked at Yiguchen, who was chatting with Tsang Yue, Yan Wushuang, Princess Fengxi, and the others. Some of the Sky Prides present were envious and jealous. He's quite popular with women, but this is the only time he'll have a good time. Senior brother Haoyan doesn't have to do anything, I'll definitely kill him on Sky Burial Island. Chu Xuanzhen squinted his eyes. Although Yi Guqin had already shown his strength, Chu Xuanzhen was still not afraid. He was the king of sky prides. Apart from Di Haoyan, he was not afraid of anyone. He even dared to fight against the four emperors. On the other side, Huang Qianqiu's face was also extremely cold. Yi Guqin, Duguqima, the two of you should cherish your last moments. Sky Burial Island will be the place where you will die. Huang Qianqiu said coldly in his heart. Burying Sky Island would open in 2 months. In other words, all the sky prides who survived from the sacred imperial realm would have 2 months to rest. Many people thought that these 2 months would be Yi Guqin's last moments. Not to mention whether Yi Guqin could make it out of Sky Burial Island alive. Even if he could, the Starry Sword Pavilion, Divine Sword Sect, Dongfang family, and other forces would not let him go. Yi Guqin, let's settle our grudge on Sky Burial Island, Gu Zun said in a hoarse voice. His obsession with Yi Guqin was the same as Yi Guqin's obsession with Gu Xiaoyang. If he did not get rid of it, the heart demon would always exist. I'll wait. Yi Guqin looked straight at Gu Zun. The grudge between the sword and the saber had been dragging on since the forbidden city of the Saint Origin dynasty. It was time to settle it. Let's settle it on Sky Burial Island. Master, I want to be a guest at the Sword Dynasty too. A girl with 2 ponytails and a face as clear as jade flashed over. She was the princess of the War God dynasty, Zhao Xiaodi. I've already said that you don't need to be my maid. Yi Guqin felt a headache coming on. No, I, Zhao Xiaodi, am a woman of my word. I will never go back on my words. Zhao Xiaodi puffed out her flat and soft chest and said righteously. Yan Wushuang, Princess Fengxi, and the others looked at Yi Guqin strangely. Even a little girl couldn't resist Yi Guqin's charm? Who would have thought that under the Jiankui mask would be the famous Yi Guqin who heavily injured Di Haoyan? Zhao Shinkong walked over with a complicated expression. Thank you for that, Yi Guqin said. He was naturally referring to Zhao Shinkong's bravery on the Sage Emperor stage. That's all, Zhao Shinkong said. Let's go to the Sword Dynasty? Yi Guqin asked. Why not? Zhao Shinkong smiled faintly. A smile of gratitude and enmity. Seeing this scene, many people sighed. Who would have thought that the War God dynasty and the Sword Dynasty would fight for so long? And the son of the Heaven War Emperor actually became friends with Jian Kuei of the Sword Dynasty. If the Heaven War Emperor knew about this, he would probably be speechless. Although Yi Guqin is quite good at making enemies, he's also quite good at making friends. Jun Xiaoyao, Yi Zongyue, and Zhao Shinkong are all on good terms with him. This is his charisma, okay? If it were you, would Jun Xiaoyao and the others be willing to take a second look at you? Dragons don't live with snakes, some of the geniuses discussed. On the other side, Dugu Qiuemo stood alone. Compared to Yi Guqin, who was surrounded by everyone, Dugu Qiuemo seemed very lonely. However, his demonic and cold expression didn't change at all. There wasn't a trace of envy or jealousy. He was Yi Guqin's shadow. He was a sharp sword hidden in the darkness. Only when Yi Guqin needed him the most would he walk out of the darkness and become the sharpest sword in Yi Guqin's hand. Qiuemo. On the side, Princess Luoho stepped forward with worry in her gray eyes. She had a feeling that Dugu Qiuemo's attitude towards Yi Guqin was a bit strange. But she couldn't tell what was wrong. Don't worry, just wait for the Battle of Zhangtian Island. Dugu Qiuemo closed his eyes and said lightly. As for Qin Qingxiao, he had been severely injured when he was fighting Dao Wumeng. When they left the Holy Emperor realm, Dugu Qiuemo directly destroyed Qin Qingxiao's mind with the Soul Demon Seed. The first half of the Battle of the Holy Emperor realm on the battlefield of geniuses came to an end. At first, everyone thought that the most dazzling people in the Battle of the Holy Emperor realm would be Huang Qianqiu, Chu Xuanzhen, Gu Xiaoyang, Jun Xiaoyao, and the others. But they didn't expect that a genius of a dynasty would rise against the trend and become the most dazzling star. They also didn't expect that the real identity of Jian Kuei of the Sword Dynasty, who always wore a ghost face mask, was Yi Guqin. He had once stirred up a storm on the Tianhuang plain. The ultimate inheritance of the Holy Emperor realm had also fallen into the hands of Yi Guqin. The news of the Holy Emperor realm began to spread rapidly in the Nantian region as if it had grown wings. Yi Guqin, on the other hand, was preparing to return to the Sword Dynasty with a group of sword sons and friends to recuperate. The entire battlefield of geniuses was divided into two halves. The first half of the Battle of the Holy Emperor realm was still the internal competition of the geniuses of the Nantian region. The second half of the Battle of Zongtian Island was the real ultimate battlefield where geniuses of the Dark World would appear. It was far more brutal than the Holy Emperor realm. And at that time, some of the real top geniuses of the Nantian region would appear. The geniuses and successors of the four great dominating clans would also appear. It could be said that Zongtian Island was the ultimate battle between the geniuses of the Nantian region and the Dark World. Only the strongest and most talented geniuses could shine on Zongtian Island. Brother Yi, Di Haoyan should appear in the Battle of Zongtian Island this time. He may even become the leader of the geniuses of the Nantian region. If he attacks you, it will be troublesome. On a ship, Jun Xiaoyao frowned and said to Yi Guqin, "Different situations call for different actions. Di Haoyan is a man, not a god," Yi Guqin said. Moreover, the trump card that he had prepared for Di Haoyan had not been revealed yet. "Brother Yi, it's good that you have this confidence. As long as you can survive the Battle of Zongtian Island, I believe that the Supreme Elders in the pavilion will not be indifferent to you," Jun Xiaoyao said. "I hope so," Yi Guqin said. After Zongtian Island, he did need the protection of a force. Although Bei Miao was following him to the Sword Dynasty, she had no place to go for the time being. She was just going to join in the fun. It was impossible to expect Bei Miao to stay by Yi Guqin's side for a long time. "Shuer, will you appear in the battle between Zongtian Island and the Dark World?" Yi Guqin murmured to himself. He thought of the adorable little girl with bright silver hair. He could not forget that when Shuer awakened the physique of the heaven-weeping witch, she transformed into a peerless woman, Ji Ru Shui. After the battle on the Tianhuang Plain, Shuer was brought back to the Dark World by Shui Yiqing. Yi Guqin had a hunch that he might be able to see Shuer again on Zongtian Island. At that time, how would Shuer face him? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.